Hey guys, tonight we are going to take a little trip back in time, but we are not going to be building Parthenons or debating philosophy with Socrates in a toga. No, we are diving into something a little more complicated. We are heading to ancient Greece to explore the dark and paradoxical nature of female beauty. It is a world where being exceptionally beautiful was not necessarily a ticket to a happy life. In fact, it was often the opposite. It was a dangerous, double-edged sword that could attract the worst kind of attention from both gods and mortals. It is a world where being voted most likely to succeed might actually mean most likely to be turned into a spider by a jealous goddess. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop me a comment below with your city and what time it is for you. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you know isn't your name. It's a sound, a soft, rustling murmur that follows you from room to room in your father's house. It's the sound of indrawn breaths, of whispers hastily exchanged behind hands when you, a small child, toddle into a courtyard. You don't understand the words yet, but you understand the tone. It's a mix of awe and something else, something heavier, caution, perhaps, or even a faint tremor of fear. You are born into a world of whitewashed walls, the sharp scent of olive groves carried on the breeze, and the distant bleating of goats. But your world is primarily defined by the way people look at you. Your mother, a practical woman with capable hands, often gazes at you with an expression you can't quite decipher. It's not just love, it's a profound, aching worry. She teaches you to spin wool, her fingers guiding yours, but her eyes are on your face, a face that seems to catch the sunlight in a way other children's don't. Your father, when he returns from the agra, lifts you up, his voice booming with pride, but it's a guarded pride, as if he is holding a priceless, fragile vase that he fears might be stolen at any moment. You are his daughter, yes, but you are also becoming something else, a reputation, a spectacle. As you grow, you start to piece it together. The word they use is kalos, beautiful, but it's more than that. The word carries the weight of being good, noble, and worthy, a heavy burden for a child who just wants to chase lizards in the sun. Strangers don't ask who you are, they simply stare. A potter, his hands caked with clay, stops his wheel just to watch you pass by. A merchant at his stall offers you the sweetest fig, not with a friendly smile, but with a reverent, almost fearful deference, as if you were a small, living effigy of a goddess. This isn't flattery, it's an assessment, a categorization. You are being placed on a pedestal you never asked for, and you're beginning to realize how terribly high up it is. One afternoon, you catch your reflection in a polished bronze shield leaning against a wall. The image is warm, distorted, but clear enough. You see what they see. A symmetry that feels accidental. A harmony of features that you had no hand in creating. You notice your own eyebrows, two distinct arches. You've overheard the older girls whispering about how some of the most admired women in the city use a fine powder, a mix of soot and oil, to delicately connect their brows. A single, dark, unbroken line above the eyes is considered a mark of supreme beauty and aristocratic grace. This tiny, strange detail makes you realize that this ideal you supposedly embody is not just a natural state, but a set of highly specific, even artificial, rules. It's a game with a bizarre rulebook, and you've been made a star player without ever learning how to play. You start to listen more closely to the stories the old nurse tells, the epic poems your tutor recites. They are filled with beautiful women, but their stories rarely end well. Their beauty is a magnet for chaos, a catalyst for divine rage and mortal obsession. And this brings you to a quiet, unsettling question, a question that historians still grapple with today. How much of our understanding of a Greek woman's experience is real, and how much is a projection? The stories, the plays, the histories, They were almost all written by men, looking from the outside in, or were they documenting the genuine social terror of being a beautiful woman, or were they crafting a cautionary narrative about the disruptive, untamable power of female beauty that served their own patriarchal anxieties? The line is impossibly blurry. For you, living inside this reality, the distinction doesn't matter. The feeling of being watched, of being a beautiful thing that is both treasured and feared, is growing stronger every day. It's a gift, they all say. But as you lie on your simple pallet bed, listening to the night sounds of the city, it feels less like a gift and more like a heavy cloak, smothering you before your life has even truly begun. You learn a new rule, not through words, but through the sharp, disapproving glint in your mother's eye. The rule is this: to be seen is to be compromised. A respectable woman, a good woman, does not parade herself in the open air of the polis, the bustling world of men. Her domain is the oikos, the home. Her virtue is measured in her invisibility. And here lies the cruel joke the fates have played on you. Your very existence is a spectacle. Your beauty makes you inherently, unavoidably visible. This becomes painfully clear during the Panathenaya, the grand festival for the goddess Athena. It's one of the few occasions where women of your standing are permitted, even expected, to appear in public procession. Your mother and the female slaves spend hours dressing you. The linen of your chiton is impossibly fine, the pleats arranged just so. Your hair is intricately braided and scented with oil. You are not just a girl. You are a walking, breathing statement of your father's wealth and status. You are an advertisement for the quality of his household. As you walk in the procession, the sun beating down, you feel 1,000 pairs of eyes on you, and they are not kind, admiring glances. They are analytical. They are the eyes of men assessing livestock, of craftsmen judging material. You hear the muttering, no longer hushed. Her neck is long, like a swan's, says one. They find out we shall command, speculates another. They aren't talking to you, or even really about you. They are talking about a collection of valuable attributes. Your beauty isn't a part of your personality. It has replaced it entirely. It has turned you from a person into a portfolio of assets. Your ankles, your wrists, the color of your hair, they are all line items on a public ledger. This exposure feels so violating that you find yourself craving the quiet confinement of your home. You live most of your life in the Guinea icon it is, the women's quarters. This is a very real, architectural space, usually on the upper floor of the house, deliberately set back from the street and from the men's area, the undrawn. Here, in a world of women, the air is thick with the scent of lanolin from the wool, the clatter of the loom, and the low hum of conversation. You wave, you gossip, you learn from your mother how to manage a household. It is a safe, enclosed world, but the longer you live in it, the more you realize it's not just a sanctuary, it's a cage. A gilded one, to be sure, but a cage nonetheless. When your father has guests for a symposium, you and the other women are hidden away. You can hear the distant sounds of male laughter, of philosophical debate, of poetry being recited, the sounds of the world, and you are separate from it. Here we brush up against a favorite debate among historians. Just how strict was this female seclusion? The literature, written by elite men, paints a picture of near total confinement for respectable women. But was this the lived reality for everyone? Or was it an ideal that only the very wealthy could afford to practice? You see glimpses of another life from your high window. You see the baker's wife, her face flushed from the heat of the oven, shouting a joke to a customer. You see a potter's daughter, her arms strung and smeared with clay, hauling water from the public fountain. They are visible. They are part of the city as fabric. They are not talked about in the same way you are. Their existence isn't a matter of public debate. Their bodies are their own, used for work and for life, not for display. You find yourself feeling a strange envy. Their lives are harder, no doubt, but they seem to own them. This brings you to a chilling realization. Your beauty has made the ideal of the unseen woman impossible for you to achieve. You are a paradox. By being the pinnacle of what is considered physically desirable, You are failing at the most fundamental social requirement for a woman of your class. Modesty through obscurity. Pericles, the great statesman, would one day say that a woman's greatest glory is to be least talked about by men, whether for praise or for blame. But you are a constant topic of conversation. The praise you receive is not for your character or your skill at the loom. It is for the sheer, random accident of your face and form. And that praise feels dangerous. It's a spotlight, and in the bright glare, you feel every bit of your agency, your selfhood, withering away. Your beauty does not belong to you. It belongs to your father, who will one day trade it for a favorable marriage alliance. It belongs to the city. As a point of pride and gossip, it is a public treasure, openly displayed, and like any treasure left unguarded, it's just waiting for a thief. Your nurse, a woman with skin like a sun-dried apple and eyes that have seen too much, is the one who first whispers the real danger to you. She does it late one night, while brushing your long hair. Her voice, the low, urgent hum. The danger, she says, isn't just from the men you can see in the agora. It's from the ones you can't see, the ones who live on a mountain you can only glimpse on the clearest of days. Olympus, she tells you that the gods are vain, impossibly, petulantly vain. They see the world of mortals as their own personal stage, and they do not appreciate being upstaged. And there is nothing, she warns, that draws their attention faster than a mortal who is too beautiful, too skilled, too clever. Your beauty, she explains, is not just an affront to the other girls in the city. It's a potential affront to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty herself. It's a challenge to her stately majesty, to Athena's severe grace. You are a flickering candle trying to outshine a bonfire, and the bonfire has a notoriously short temper. You start to see it everywhere in the stories. The world of myth is a graveyard of mortals who flew too close to the divine sun. Think of Arachne, the weaver. Her skill was just a talent. It was a defiant roar of perfection that the goddess Athena couldn't ignore. The ensuing contest was a friendly rivalry. It was a divine beatdown, ending with Arachne transformed into a spider, doomed to weave forever. The message is brutally clear. Excellence is fine, but do not, under any circumstances, believe your excellence puts you on par with the gods. It's a form of hubris, the most dangerous sin of all. Your mother reinforces this lesson in a more practical way. Whenever someone praises your beauty too effusively, she is quick to deflect. A gift from the gods, she'll murmur, her eyes cast downward. May they continue to be generous. It's a verbal dance, a constant, low-grade prayer of appeasement. It's like living with a slumbering, irritable predator in the next room. You learn to walk softly and speak in whispers. You are taught to dedicate your beauty to the gods, to frame it as a pale reflection of their own divine perfection. You weave a tapestry to be offered at Athena's temple, deliberately making a small, almost imperceptible error in the pattern. It's a gesture of humility, a whispered apology for being good, but not too good. This is where you stumble upon a peculiar aspect of Greek religion that feels very different from modern ideas of faith. Their relationship with the gods was deeply transactional, almost like a business arrangement. The phrase doutas, I give, so that you might give, was the unspoken contract. You offer a sacrifice, a libation of wine, a portion of your harvest, and in return, you expect a favorable wind for your ships, a healthy crop, or, in your case, to be left alone. It's less about devout worship and more about cosmic risk management. You pay your divine taxes to keep the auditors from Mount Olympus away from your door. Historians often abate the depth of genuine piety versus this pragmatic, almost cynical, religious worldview. Was it faith, or was it fear dressed up in ritual? For you, it's all fear. The gods are not loving parents. They are powerful, fickle, and dangerously human in their insecurities. You begin to have nightmares. In them, you are standing in a field of asphodel, and a shadow falls over you. You look up and see a face in the clouds, beautiful and terrifying, its expression unreadable but intensely focused on you. You wake up with your heart pounding, the scent of ozone, the smell of a lightning strike lingering in the air. The fear is no longer abstract. It's a knot in your stomach, a constant hum of anxiety beneath the surface of your daily life. Your beauty, this thing you're celebrated for, now feels like a beacon in the dark, attracting moths, yes, but also attracting things with much sharper teeth. You find yourself practicing a kind of reverse vanity. You try to make yourself smaller, less noticeable. You pull your himadion, your cloak, more tightly around your face when you have to go out. You avoid catching your own reflection. You are engaged in a desperate, silent negotiation with the universe. You are trying to convince the most powerful beings in existence that you are not a threat. You are not a rival. You are just a girl. Please, please, just let me be a girl. But you have a sinking feeling that it's already too late. The gods are watching, and they are very, very jealous. The name Medusa is whispered in the women's quarters, not as a monster's name, but as a ghost story. A cautionary tale for girls who are too pleasing to the eye. The story you hear isn't the one you might know, the one of a fearsome gorgon born of monsters. No, the version that circulates in the quiet corners of your home is far more tragic, and for you, far more terrifying. In this tone, Medusa was once a human girl, a priestess in the temple of Athena, and she was beautiful, not just ordinarily pretty, but breathtakingly, distractingly beautiful. Her most striking feature, the women say, was her hair. It was like a waterfall of polished obsidian, so lovely that it inspired poetry. Men would come to the temple not just to worship the goddess of wisdom, but to catch a glimpse of her beautiful servant. Her beauty was a problem, a disruption to the sacred order, but the true catastrophe came not from a mortal man, but from a god. Poseidon, the lord of the seas, saw her and was overcome with lust. He didn't court her or woo her. He took her by force, and he did it on the cold, sacred floor of Athena's own temple. Here, the story takes its cruelest turn. Athena, enraged by the desecration of her holy space, arrives, but her divine fury is not directed at Poseidon, her powerful fellow Olympian. He is, after all, her uncle, a god of equal standing. Punishing him would be messy, a cosmic political incident. It's far easier to punish the mortal, the victim. You can almost picture the scene. Medusa, violated and terrified, looking to her patron goddess for justice, for comfort, and what she receives is a curse. Athena, in a fit of what the storytellers frame as righteous fury, but what feels to you like horrifying, misplaced jealousy, transforms her. The beautiful hair that had attracted all the unwanted attention becomes a writhing mass of venomous snakes. Her lovely face is twisted into a monstrous visage, so terrible that any man who gazes upon it is instantly turned to stone. She is banished, made a monster, her name destined to become a synonym for terror. This story chills you to the bone. It lays bare the terrifying injustice of the divine world. Medusa's crime was being beautiful enough to be desired, and then being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was punished not for her actions, but for what was done to her. It's a divine case of victim blaming, written into the very fabric of the cosmos. The message to you is unmistakable. Your beauty makes you a target, and if a god decides to claim you, it is you who will bear the consequences. The goddess you might pray to for protection could be the very one to condemn you. You learn about the concept of miasma, a kind of spiritual pollution, a place where a great crime, like a murder or a sacrilege, has occurred is tainted by it. What happened to Medusa suggests that a person, too, can be polluted by the actions of others. She was desecrated, and therefore she herself became a source of desecration. This idea is a cornerstone of Greek religious belief, and it's profoundly unsettling. It means that your purity, your very worth, is not entirely within your own control. It can be stripped from you in an instant, and the world will see you not as a victim, but as a stained. This leads you to a lesser known but equally chilling tidbit you overhear from a traveling storyteller. He speaks of the priest-assessed burden. In many cults, especially those dedicated to virgin goddesses like Athena or Artemis, The priestesses were required to be virgins. Their physical purity was considered essential to the sanctity of the temple. But this also made them objects of a perverse kind of fascination for some men, who saw their untouchable status as the ultimate prize. The storyteller mentions, with a grim chuckle, that there are more than a few myths about heroes or gods whose greatest conquest was a consecrated priestess, the very thing that was meant to protect them. Their sacred duty became the bullseye on their back. Historians still debate the true social standing of priestesses in ancient Greece. Were they powerful figures in their own right, wielding genuine religious authority? Or were they, like Medusa, essentially beautiful, well-born ornaments for a temple? Their lives dictated by patriarchal religious structures. The evidence is fragmented, pointing in both directions. Some, like the Pythia at Delphi, were immensely influential. Others were likely as vulnerable as any other woman. You start to look at your own reflection differently. You see your hair, and you think of snakes. You see your eyes, and you think of the power to turn men to stone. The story of Medusa has been twisted over the centuries into a simple monster tale that for you, in this moment, it's not about a monster. It's about a girl who was punished for being beautiful in a world where gods are bullies and justice is a matter of convenience. You begin to understand that the monsters of your world are not always born. Sometimes they are made, and they are often made from beautiful girls who simply had the misfortune of being noticed by a god. The next story that seeps into your consciousness is that of Cassandra. And if Medusa's tale was a lesson in divine jealousy, Cassandra's is a masterclass in divine cruelty. It's not a story you hear in one sitting. It comes in fragments. A line from a traveling art rhapsody, a scene painted on a wine crater, a bitter reference in a play. Piecing it together is like assembling a mosaic of despair. Cassandra, you learn, was a princess of Troy, and like all the women in these stories, she was exceptionally beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that she caught the eye of the most radiant and terrifying of the gods, Apollo of the silver bow, the god of music, poetry, and prophecy. He wanted her, and like a child who sees a pretty toy, he decided he must have it. But Cassandra was proud. She did not want to be another one of Apollo's mortal playthings, cherished for a season and then discarded, so she refused him. This was a stunning, almost suicidal act of defiance. Mortals did not say no to the gods. But Apollo, unaccustomed to rejection, did not resort to force. He decided to bargain. He offered her a gift, a bribe of cosmic proportions, the gift of prophecy. She would know the future. She would see what was to come. Cassandra, perhaps seeing a way to gain power in a world where she had none, agreed. Apollo, true to his word, bestowed the gift upon her. The exact method is a bit weird, and frankly, injogifinic. One version of the myth says he literally breathed the divine knowledge into her mouth. After the transfer was complete, he moved in to claim his side of the bargain, and Cassandra, gift in hand, refused him again. The fury of a god scorned is a terrible thing. Apollo could not take back the gift of prophecy. Divine gifts, once given, are apparently non-refundable, but he could amend it. He could add a single, devastating condition. He leaned it on, with a final, damning touch. Some say a kiss, others say he spat in her mouth, a detail scholars love to argue over. He added his curse. Cassandra would still see the future with perfect, agonizing clarity, that no one would ever believe her. Think about that for a moment. It's not just the frustration of being ignored. It's the slow, grinding madness of knowing the absolute truth, while everyone you love dismisses you as a hysterical madwoman. Cassandra saw it all. She saw the Trojan horse for what it was, a belly, if you will, of death. She screamed warnings until her throat was raw. She told her father, King Priam, not to bring it inside the city walls. They patted her on the head and called her Prokosandra, their eyes full of pity and condescension. She saw the razing of her city, the death of her family, her own enslavement and eventual murder. She saw every single step of the path to ruin, and she was forced to walk it, her unheeded warnings echoing in her own ears. Her beauty was the catalyst for it all. It attracted the god, which led to the gift, which, when refused, led to the curse. Her beauty didn't give her power. It gave her a front row seat to her own powerlessness. It made her a prophet whose truth was worthless. This is a special kind of psychological torture that only a god could devise. You learn a strange little detail about prophecy in your world. It wasn't always about grand, sweeping visions. Sometimes it was about interpreting bird flight, or neath omen's eye, or reading the entrails of a sacrificed animal. Haru spicy. A priest would examine the color and shape of a goat's liver to determine the will of the gods. It was a messy, codified, and deeply serious business. This makes Cassandra's gift even more remarkable. She didn't need the props. She had a direct, unmediated line to the future. It was pure, potent, and utterly useless. This fact highlights the exquisite cruelty of Apollo's curse. He gave her the most powerful version of the gift, only to make it completely impotent. Was Cassandra a real person? Almost certainly not. But historians believe the myth reflects a deep-seated Greek anxiety about the nature of knowledge and power, especially in the hands of women. A woman who knows too much was seen as a disruptive force. In a society where men controlled the public discourse, a woman with a direct line to the truth, bypassing all male authority, was a terrifying prospect. The myth of Cassandra serves to neutralize that threat. It tells you, and every other woman, that even if you somehow possess divine knowledge, it wouldn't matter. You wouldn't be believed. Your voice would be silenced, not by force, but by the crushing weight of public disbelief. So you learn another lesson. Don't be so beautiful you attract a god. But if you do, don't refuse him. And if you do refuse him, don't accept any gifts first. The rules are labyrinthine and contradictory. You feel trapped. Medusa was punished for her passivity, for being a victim. Cassandra was punished for her agency, for daring to say no. It seems there is no right way to be a beautiful woman. Every path, whether of submission or defiance, leads to a precipice. Your mind flashes on the image of Cassandra, draped in black, wailing her prophecies to a crowd that just smiles sadly and walks away. You have a voice. You have a mind. But you're starting to fear that your face will always speak louder. And in the end, it will drown out everything else you have to say. The divine realm isn't just populated by vain goddesses and predatory gods. There's another, quieter danger. The ones who demand absolute, undivided devotion. And if your human talents even remotely echo their divine portfolio, you're not seen as a devout follower. You're seen as a rival. This is what you learned from the story of Arachne, a tale that has less to do with beauty of the face and more with the beauty of creation. A talent so profound it becomes a fatal flaw. Arachne, you're told, was a simple country girl from Lydia, a place famous for its purple dyes. She was not a princess or a priestess. She was a weaver. But her skill was not simple. It was sublime. When she worked the loom, it was said that the nymphs of the forest would creep out from the trees to watch. Mesmerized, her fingers didn't just weave thread, they wove life. The scenes she created on her tapestries were so realistic. You'd expect the waves to crash and the animals to breathe. Her fame grew, and with it, a creeping pride. People would say, surely, she must have been taught by Athena herself. For Athena was the goddess of wisdom, but also of the domestic arts, especially weaving. This was meant as the highest compliment, that Arachne would bristle, taught by Athena. She'd scoff, let her come and compete with me. If I lose, I will accept any punishment. This, you realize, is the moment the fates seal her doom. It's one thing to be proud of your work. It's another to issue a direct challenge to a goddess, especially the notoriously prickly virgin goddess of wisdom. Athena, of course, hears this. Being a goddess, she first tries a more subtle approach. She appears to Arachne disguised as a frail old woman and gently advises her to be more humble, to content herself with being the best mortal weaver. Seek fame from your fellow mortals. The old woman croaks, but yield to the goddess. Arachne, full of the arrogance of youth and genius, dismisses the old woman with contempt, repeating her challenge. At that, Athena sheds her disguise, and the contest is on. They set up their looms, and the weaving begins. Athena, in her tapestry, weaves a majestic scene depicting the glory of the gods. At its center is her contest with Poseidon for the city of Athens. In the corners, she adds for smaller scenes, each a grim warning to arrogant mortals who dared to challenge the gods and were met with terrible fates. It is a masterpiece of power, propaganda, and a very clear, unsubtle threat. Arachne, in a breathtaking act of defiance, weaves something entirely different. Her tapestry is a catalogue of divine hypocrisy. She weaves scene after scene of the gods, especially Zeus and Apollo, shamelessly deceiving and abusing mortal women. She shows Zeus disguised as a swan to seduce Leda, as a bull to abduct Europa, as a shower of gold for Danae. It is a stunning, meticulously crafted expose of divine corruption and lust. And worse, it is flawless. Technically, it is even more beautiful than Athena's. Athena, examining Arachne's work, is seized by a rage that is part professional jealousy and part fury at the insolence of the subject matter. She cannot find a single flaw in the weaving, so she simply loses her temper. She rips Arachne's masterpiece to shreds and beats the young weaver with her shuttle. Arachne, humiliated and terrified, runs and tries to hang herself. It is only then that Athena seems to feel a sliver of what might be pity, or perhaps just a desire for a more creative punishment. She saves Arachne from death but transforms her. Her body shrivels. Her fingers become long and spindly. She is turned into a spider, cursed to hang and weave for all eternity, a perpetual reminder of her hubris. This story adds another layer to your growing fear. It's not enough to avoid attracting lust or jealousy. You must also hide your talents. If you are good at something, painting, poetry, music, even weaving, do not be too good. Excellence is a magnet for divine retribution. This is where you encounter a fascinating bit of social trivia. In ancient Greece, certain crafts were highly respected, but the craftsmen themselves were often looked down upon by the aristocracy. To work with your hands, to be a bona sos, was considered slightly demeaning for an elite citizen. This creates a strange paradox. A skill like weaving was essential for the household, the mark of a good wife, that to be a professional, to be an artist like Arachne, was to occupy a lower social rung while simultaneously risking divine anger. The debate among classicists here is whether these myths were genuinely religious tales or a form of social control. Was the story of Arachne meant to keep the gods happy, or was it meant to keep ambitious, talented lower-class women in their place? Was it about piety or patriarchy? The answer is likely both. It reinforces the cosmic hierarchy while also reinforcing the social one. You look at your own hands. At the loom sitting in the corner of the Guinea icon it is. You are taught to weave, just as every other girl is. It is part of your education, part of your value as a future wife. But the story of Arachne puts a chill in your fingers. You find yourself deliberately making your patterns simpler, your figures a little less lifelike. You weave the acceptable stories, the triumphs of gods, the heroic deeds of men. You would never dare to weave the truth you are starting to see, the hypocrisy, the cruelty, the injustice. Your loom is not a tool for self-expression. It is a tool for survival. You must be skilled enough to be a good wife, but not so skilled that you draw the attention of a goddess. You must weave a life of careful, calculated mediocrity, because in your world, genius doesn't just go unruffled. It gets you turned into a spider. The gods are a distant, terrifying threat, like a looming thunderstorm on the horizon. But you're beginning to learn that the men you see every day can be just as dangerous. Their obsessions just as destructive. The air you breathe is thick with stories of mortal men, kings and heroes, whose desire for a beautiful woman eclipses all reason, leading to feuds, betrayals, and bloodshed. You hear the tale of Hippodamia, a princess whose father, King Oenomaus, was a son of Ares, the god of war. He was fiercely, unnaturally protective of her, perhaps due to a prophecy that he would be killed by his son-in-law. To prevent her from ever marrying, he devised a sadistic contest. Any suitor seeking her and had to race him in a chariot. If the suitor won, he would get Hippodamia and the kingdom. If he lost, he would be executed. This was the fair race. The king's horses were a divine gift from Ars himself. They were tireless and faster than the wind. The deck was completely stacked. 13 suitors, you are told, had tried and failed. Their heads were nailed to the wooden doors of the palace, a gruesome gallery of failed romance. Hippodamia was a prize in a game she had no say in, her beauty a lure for a death trap. She was forced to watch as suitor after suitor, brave and foolish in equal measure, raced to their deaths for the chance to possess her. Then came Pelops. He was handsome, heroic, and, most importantly, clever. He saw the heads on the palace gates and decided against a fair fight. He went to Myrtilus, the king's charioteer, and bribed him. The nature of the bribe is a point of contention among storytellers. Some say it was the promise of half the kingdom. Others whisper it was the promise of the first night with Hippodamia. Whatever the promise, Myrtilus agreed. He replaced the bronze linchpins of the king's chariot with new ones made of beeswax. The race began. As King O and Emmaus bore down on Pelops, ready for the kill, the beeswax spins melted from the friction. The wheels of his chariot flew off, and he was dragged to his death, fulfilling the prophecy. Pelops won the race, the kingdom, and Hippodamia. But the story doesn't end there. In a classic hero move of tying up loose ends, Pelops then murdered his co-conspirator, Myrtilus, throwing him into the sea to avoid paying his debt. As Myrtilus fell, he cursed Pelops and his entire lineage. This curse would go on to plague the house of Atrus for generations, leading to unspeakable acts of murder, cannibalism, and betrayal, a tragic cycle that would fuel the plays of Aeschylus and Euripides. And what of Hippodamia? She is the pivot point for this entire saga of blood and betrayal. The race was for her. The bribe was for her. The curse that doomed her children and grandchildren was born from the contest for her hand. Yet, in the story, she is utterly passive. She is an object, a beautiful trophy to be won. Her own thoughts, her feelings about being the prize in a lethal game, are completely irrelevant to the narrative. Her beauty is simply a catalyst for male ambition and violence. Here, you learn a fascinating, if grim, detail about ancient Greek marriage customs, specifically the concept of exogamai, marrying outside your social group or village. For the elite, marriage was rarely about love. It was a political and economic strategy. A beautiful daughter was a high-value asset that could be used to forge an alliance with a powerful neighboring king. The story of Hippodamia, in a twisted way, is a mythological exaggeration of this reality. A suitor was just winning a wife. He was winning power, territory, and influence. This makes the men's willingness to risk death slightly more understandable, if no less horrifying. They weren't just lobby-sick fools. They were venture capitalists making a high-risk, high-reward investment. Historians often wonder about the women in these strategic marriages. Were they all as passive as Hippodamia is portrayed? Or did some of them find ways to exert influence from within the confines of their new homes? We have tantalizing hints of powerful queen consorts and politically savvy wives, but their stories are largely obscured, seen through the lens of male historians who were more interested in battles and political treaties than in the quiet, domestic power plays of the Guinea. Iconides, you look at your own father, a man you love, and see a flicker of King O and Emmaus in him, not in his cruelty, but in his view of you as an asset. He is kind to you, he provides for you, but he is also cultivating you, your education, your weaving skills, your carefully guarded reputation. It's all part of building up your value for the inevitable transaction of marriage. The story of Hippodamia teaches you that the love of a father and the obsession of a suitor can look frighteningly similar. Both can turn you into an object, a prize to be guarded or won. You are not a participant in your own life story. You are the MacGuffin, the beautiful, silent thing that all the men are fighting over. There is one goddess whose jealousy you learn to fear above all others, not because she is fickle or vain in the same way as Aphrodite, but because her rage is righteous, relentless, and terrifyingly personal. That goddess is Hera, queen of the heavens, long-suffering wife of the chronically unfaithful Zeus. Her portfolio is marriage, women, and childbirth. She is supposed to be your ultimate protector, the divine matriarch. The cruel irony is that she is often the most significant danger to any woman who has the misfortune of being beautiful enough to attract Zeus. Her husband's infidelity turns her into a divine engine of vengeance. And like Athena with Medusa, Hera rarely, if ever, directs her anger at its true source. Zeus is too powerful, the king of the gods, so she goes after the other woman. Every single time, you hear the story of Leto, a gentle titaness who became pregnant with Zeus's children. When Hera found out, she unleashed a campaign of terror. First, she decreed that Leto could not give birth on any land that touched the sun. She was cursed to wander the earth, pregnant and in labor, with no place to rest. Every island, every continent, feared her as wrath and turned her away. You imagine her, heavy with child, exhausted, begging for a single patch of ground on which to deliver her babies. It's a uniquely feminine kind of torture, turning the very act of childbirth into a source of endless suffering. Finally, she found a floating, barren island of Delos, which technically was land and thus offered a loophole to the curse. But Hera was finished. She then kidnapped Tyle, the goddess of childbirth, and held her hostage on Olympus, preventing Leto's labor from progressing. For 9 days and 9 nights, Leto was trapped in agonizing, unrelenting labor pains. The other goddesses on Olympus finally took pity on her, intervened, and freed Islet Hya. Only then could Leto give birth to the twin gods, Artemis and Apollo. Her story is a testament to Hera's incredible capacity for a grudge. Then there is Semele, a mortal princess from Thebes. Zeus fell for her, visiting her in secret. When Hera discovered the affair, she devised a more cunning plan. She disguised herself as Semele's old, trusted nurse and planted a seed of doubt in the young woman's mind. How do you know H.E.S. really Zeus? The disguised Hera asked. Mortal men can be deceivers. If he truly loves you, ask him to appear to you in his true, divine form. That will be the proof. Semele, young and insecure, fell for the trick. The next time Zeus visited, she made him swear an unbreakable oath on the river Styx to grant her one wish. He foolishly agreed. She then made her request to see him in all his divine glory. Zeus was horrified. He begged her to reconsider. He knew that no mortal could withstand the sight of his true form, a being of pure light and lightning. That the oath was sworn. He had no choice. He appeared before her, and she was instantly incinerated, burnt to a crisp by his divine radiance. Her story is a chilling example of Hera using an enemy's own insecurity as a weapon. You come across a weird little detail in some versions of the Semele myth. After she is destroyed, Zeus manages to rescue their unborn child from her ashes. To keep the fetus safe until it was ready to be born, he sewed it into his own thigh. A few months later, the baby god Dionysus was born from Zeus's thigh. This bizarre image of male pregnancy is so strange, so counter to the natural order, that it only emphasizes the chaos caused by her as jealousy. Her as rage is so famous. It becomes a kind of narrative engine for countless myths. If a hero needs a series of impossible tasks to complete, you can bet Hera is behind it, making his life miserable because he is an illegitimate son of Zeus. Heracles, the greatest of all Greek heroes, is a prime example. His very name means glory of Hera, which is a deeply ironic title given that she spent his entire life trying to destroy him. From sending snakes to his crib as a baby to driving him mad and causing him to kill his own wife and children. The historians you listen to have a fascinating take on Hera. They suggest that her character might be a mythological reflection of the anxieties and limited power of a high-status Greek wife. The Kyrios, or male head of the household, had absolute authority A wife had to manage the home, produce legitimate heirs, and tolerate her husband's indiscretions, which often included relationships with slaves, concubines, or prostitutes. She had no legal recourse. Her only power was within the domestic sphere. Here, in her rage, is a funhouse mirror reflection of this. She cannot challenge the patriarch, Zeus, directly, so she wields her power viciously within her own domain, persecuting her rivals and their children. She is the ultimate, cosmically empowered scorned wife. The lesson for you is stark and terrifying. Of all the beings on her Olympus, the one who should be your natural ally is your most likely enemy. Your beauty makes you a potential rival, and in Hura's eyes, a rival is not just an inconvenience. She is an existential threat to her status, her marriage, and her honor. Praying to Hera for a happy marriage feels like a sick joke. You would be praying to the very goddess whose mythology is a testament to the fact that for a beautiful woman, marriage to a powerful male is often the beginning of a lifetime of torment, orchestrated by the queen of the gods herself. The fear of abduction is a low, constant hum in the background of your life. It's in the way your mother insists a male slave accompany you even on the shortest walk to a neighbor's house. It's in the stories that are told not as myths, but as recent, horrifying events. The world, you are taught, is filled with men and gods who believe their desire is a warrant for possession. Your beauty isn't just an attribute, it's a vulnerability, a flashing sign that says, here is something worth taking. The idea of abduction as courtship is woven deeply into the fabric of your culture. It's not always seen as a violent crime, but sometimes as a romantic, albeit aggressive, gesture. A powerful man or god, so overcome by a woman's beauty, simply cannot help himself and must carry her away. This twisted romanticism does nothing to comfort you. It only makes the world feel more dangerous, because it suggests that even the men who claim to love you might see taking you against your will as a legitimate first step. The most famous example, one that is a blueprint for countless others, is Zeus's abduction of Europa. She was a Phoenician princess, playing with her friends in a meadow by the sea. Zeus, watching from on high, was smitten. He transformed himself into a magnificent white bull, with horns like polished crescent moons and a gentle, docile demeanor. The bull was so beautiful and seemed so tame that Europa and her friends were enchanted. They adorned its horns with flowers. Europa, growing bolder, climbed onto its broad back. The moment she was seated, the bull charged. It galloped away from her screaming friends, plunged into the sea, then swam away, carrying the terrified princess all the way to the island of Crete. There, Zeus revealed himself and she became another of his conquests. The story is often depicted in art as something beautiful, almost serene, a lovely girl on the back of a majestic animal, but you see it for what it is, a kidnapping. It's the story of a girl who is tricked and stolen from her home, her family, and everything she knew. The continent of Europe would later be named after her, a grand honor for a victim of a divine abduction. This theme of abduction is so pervasive that it has its own weird, specific tropes. One of these is the Meadow of Doom. It seems that if you are a beautiful young woman in a Greek myth, the absolute worst thing you can do is go picking flowers in a meadow with your friends. It's like a guaranteed trigger for a divine kidnapping. Europa was in a meadow. Persephone, as you'll soon learn, was in a meadow. It becomes a symbol of innocent, feminine vulnerability. A place where the dangers of the outside world can literally burst forth from the ground to snatch you away. You also learn about a very real, non-mythological practice that echoes this theme, marriage by capture. While not the norm in civilized city-states like Athens, historians and anthropologists point to evidence that in more archaic or remote parts of the Greek world, like Sparta, a ritual form of bride abduction was part of the marriage ceremony. The groom would abduct his bride from her family's home in a staged, symbolic act of force. While it was a ritual, its roots lie in a much more brutal, ancient practice. The fact that it survived, even as a ritual, tells you how deeply ingrained the idea of male possession and female passivity is in the cultural psyche. It frames marriage not as a partnership, but as a conquest. The legal reality for you isn't much better. You are under the legal control of your Kyrios, who is first your father, and then your husband. You cannot own significant property. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot represent yourself in court. Your legal identity is almost entirely subsumed by that of your male guardian. This lack of legal agency makes the threat of abduction even more chilling. If you were taken, the crime would legally be seen as a theft of property from your father or husband, not as a violation of your own personhood. The legal framework itself reinforces the idea that you are a possession. So, you live in a state of constant, low-grade vigilance. The world outside the walls of your home is a place of potential peril. Every stranger's gaze feels like an assessment, a sizing up. Every story of a god in disguise or a brazen king makes the shadows seem a little deeper. The distinction between a suitor, a husband, and a kidnapper starts to feel terrifyingly thin. They all seem to operate from the same basic premise. Your beauty makes you theirs for the taking. The only difference is whether they take you with your father's permission or without it. Your own permission is never part of the equation. Of all the abduction stories, the one that resonates most deeply in the quiet, cloistered world of women is the tale of Persephone. It's not a story of lust and conquest in the same way as Euripus. It's darker, colder, and it speaks to a more profound fear. The fear of being dragged away not just from your home, but from the light itself. It's a story told in hushed tones during the autumn. As the days grow shorter and the world begins to die, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, grain, and agriculture. She was a maiden, a core, a girl on the cusp of womanhood, and her life was one of sunlight, flowers, and idyllic innocence. Her mother doted on her, keeping her close. But Persephone's beauty was noticed by a king who did not live on Olympus. He lived beneath the earth. Hades, the grim, wealthy ruler of the underworld, saw her and decided she would be his queen. He didn't try to woo her. He went straight to her father, who also happened to be his brother, Zeus, and asked for her hand. Zeus, in a moment of cosmic cowardice and terrible judgment, gave his consent, but he did so secretly, knowing that Demeter would never agree to let her beloved daughter marry the lord of the dead and live in eternal darkness. He sanctioned the abduction. So, one day, as Persephone was in a meadow, of course she was, picking flowers with her nymph companions, the earth split open. A great chasm appeared, and from it, Hades emerged in his golden chariot drawn by black, immortal horses. He snatched the screaming girl, pulled her into the chariot, and descended back into the earth as the chasm sealed itself behind them, leaving no trace but the scattered flowers. What follows is one of the most powerful stories in all of Greek mythology, the grief of a mother. When Demeter realized her daughter was gone, she was consumed by a sorrow so vast it had the power to alter the world. She shed her divine radiance, disguised herself as an old woman, and wandered the earth, searching for her lost child. And in her grief, she neglected her duties. The crops failed. The earth grew barren and cold. The first winter fell upon the world. Mortals began to starve, and their unanswered sacrifices piled up at the foot of Olympus. This story is the mythological explanation for the seasons, the Aegean for why the earth is fertile for part of the year and barren for the other. Demeter's grief is winter. Her joy at her daughter's return is spring. You learn that the most important religious rites for women in Athens, the Demophoria, were a multi-day festival dedicated to Demeter and Persephone. It was an exclusively female ritual, where women reenacted the sorrow and eventual joy of the goddesses, a powerful bonding experience that affirmed their central role in agriculture and fertility. This was one of the few areas of public life where women, not men, held the primary religious authority. Finally, faced with a world dying from his sister's sorrow, Zeus was forced to act. He sent Hermes, the messenger god, down to the underworld to command Hades to release Persephone. Hades, bound by the command of his king, had to agree, but he was cunning. Before he let her go, He offered Persephone a single pomegranate seed. The girl, weary and perhaps hungry after her time in the gloom, ate it. This was a fatal mistake. By eating the food of the underworld, she became bound to it. The rules of the cosmos, older and more powerful than even the will of Zeus, dictated that she must return. A compromise was eventually reached. Persephone would spend part of the year on Earth with her mother, during which time the world would be fertile and green. But for the other part of the year, some say a third, others say half, a detail the poets could never agree on, she had to return to the underworld to sit on the throne beside her husband as the queen of the dead. Persephone's story is the ultimate horror story for a young girl. She is stolen from her mother, from the sun, and forced into a marriage in a land of darkness. Her life is forever split into. Even when she returns to the light, it is only temporary. The shadow of the underworld will always call her back. She is both the maiden of the flowers and the dread queen of the dead. Historians see this myth as a powerful allegory for the experience of a young Greek bride, like Persephone. A girl was taken from her childhood home into care of her mother and abducted into the home of her husband, a stranger. Her old life was over. She now belonged to a new family, a new household. Her identity was fundamentally and irrevocably changed. She had to leave the world of women and girls, Parthenos, and enter the world of a wife, Jai. The myth of Persephone, with its sorrow, its violence, and its final, sad compromise, was a divine mirror reflecting the very real trauma of this transition. It told every girl what to expect. Your life as you know it will end, and you will be taken into a new, darker, more complicated world, and part of you will always be lost. Not all stories of unwanted attention end in abduction or a monstrous curse. Some end in a different kind of tragedy, the loss of self, a transformation into something other than human, simply to escape. The story of Daphne becomes a whisper of a different kind of resistance, a desperate, last-ditch effort to preserve one's autonomy, even if it means ceasing to exist in human form. Daphne was a nymph, a follower of the virgin goddess Artemis. Like her patroness, she cherished her freedom and her chastity, spending her days hunting in the wild forests. She had rejected every suitor, valuing her independence above all else. Her father, a river god, despaired of her ever marrying, but her beauty, of course, did not go unnoticed. It caught the eye of Apollo, the same god who had cursed Cassandra. The story begins with Apollo, fresh from slaying the python, feeling arrogant and powerful. He sees Eros, the Roman Cupid, the mischievous god of love, toying with his own small bow and arrows. Apollo, in his hubris, mocks him. "What is a boy like you doing with a warrior's weapon?" He scoffs. "Leave the archery to me." Eros, deeply insulted, decided to teach the great Apollo a lesson. He flew to a high cliff and drew two arrows from his quiver. One was tipped with sharp gold. It was an arrow that would incite a passionate, obsessive love. The other was blunt and tipped with lead. It would cause revulsion and make the victim flee from any hint of romance. He fired the golden arrow straight into Apollo's heart. He fired the leaden one into Daphne's. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Apollo was seized with a mad, all-consuming desire for Daphne. Daphne, in turn, was filled with a profound horror of love and of Apollo in particular. The chase began. He pursued her through the forest, his pleas for her to stop only fueling her terror. He was the god of poetry, and he used all his eloquence, praising her beauty, promising her everything, that his words were meaningless to her. All she felt was the primal need to escape. He was a god, and she was a nymph. He was faster. He gained on her, his breath on the back of her neck, his hand just about to grasp her shoulder. In that final moment of desperation, she saw her father's river ahead and cried out a prayer to him. "Father, help me. Destroy the beauty that has caused me this suffering. Change the form that has pleased too much." Her father heard her plea. No sooner had she spoken the words than a strange numbness seized her limbs. A thin bark began to enclose her soft skin. Her hair sprouted into leaves. Her arms grew into branches. Her feet so swift in her flight, became rooted to the ground. She was transformed into a laurel tree. Hippolyte, arriving a moment too late, was heartbroken. He embraced the trunk of the new tree, still feeling the faint warmth of the girl within. He declared that since she could not be his bride, the laurel would be his sacred tree forever. He would wear a crown of its leaves. His lyre and quiver would be adorned with them, and the greatest of Roman victors would be crowned with laurel wreaths. Her symbol of escape became his symbol of glory. This story introduces a peculiar and fascinating element of Greek mythology, the theme of metamorphic escape. When cornered and powerless, transformation is the only way out. This happens with surprising frequency. The nymph Syrinx, pursued by the god Pan, prayed to her sisters and was turned into a patch of reeds just as he grabbed her. Pan, frustrated, cut the reeds and fashioned them into his famous pampapus. The mournful music he played was, in essence, the sound of her stolen voice. This is a recurring, deeply tragic pattern. A woman's desperate act of self-preservation is co-opted by her pursuer and turned into an accessory for his art or his glory. Her trauma becomes his trophy. Classicists often interpret these transformation myths as expressions of the ultimate power imbalance. A woman's no is not enough. Her flight is not enough. The only way to truly escape the grasp of an obsessive male, divine or mortal, is to cease to be a woman altogether. It is a victory of a sort, but a Pyrrhic one. Daphne preserves her chastity but loses her life, her voice, her humanity. The tree is a monument to her resistance, but it is a silent and moving one. You think about the laurel wreaths you've seen depicted on the heads of poets and emperors. You've always thought of them as symbols of victory and honor. Now you see them differently. You see a girl's desperate prayer answered. Her body turned to wooden leaves to escape a god who would not take no for an answer. The highest symbol of male achievement is, in fact, a reminder of a woman's terror. The victory wreath is woven from the remnants of her flight. It's a chilling thought that the very symbols of power and glory in your world are rooted in the silent, transformed bodies of women who just wanted to be left alone. Now the stage is set. You've seen the patterns of divine jealousy, mortal obsession, and desperate escape. You understand the rules of this dangerous game. Now, you will become its most famous player. Your name is Helen. You are a daughter of Zeus, who visited your mother Leda in the form of a swan. You are, quite simply, the most beautiful woman in the world, and your story will not be a minor myth whispered in the women's quarters. It will be the epicenter of the greatest war your world has ever known. Your beauty is apparent from an early age, and it is immediately a problem. Before you are even of marriageable age, you are kidnapped, not by a god, but by Theseus, the great hero of Athens. He and his best friend Pirithous made a pact to marry daughters of Zeus. Theseus chose you, the mere child. He snatched you away and carried you off to Attica, intending to keep you until you were old enough to wed. You are eventually rescued by your powerful brothers, Castor and Pollux, but the pattern is set. Your life will be a series of abductions, of being taken and reclaimed by powerful men. When you finally do come of age, the situation escalates into a political crisis. Every king and prince in Greece wants to marry you. Your stepfather, King Tyndareus of Sparta, is terrified. He knows that if he chooses one suitor, all the others will unite against him and start war. His palace is overflowing with the most powerful, arrogant, and dangerous men in the Hellenic world, all vying for your hand. You are the ultimate prize, and the tension is explosive. It is the clever Odysseus of Ithaca who devises a solution. In exchange for Tyndareus' help in securing his own marriage to your cousin, Penelope, Odysseus offers a plan. Before the choice is made, Tyndareus must make every single suitor swear a solemn oath. They must all vow to accept and defend the chosen husband's right to you, and to come to his aid with all their forces if anyone should ever try to take you away from him. Eager to resolve the crisis, all the suitors swear the oath of Tyndareus, binding their future actions to your fate. The man chosen is Menelaus, the wealthy king of Sparta. You are married to him. For a time, there is peace. You have a daughter, Hermione, You are the queen of a powerful city-state. It seems, for a moment, that your story might have a happy ending. But the oath hangs in the air, a loaded gun waiting for a trigger. And that trigger will come from a place you've never heard of, the city of Troy. The story of how the Trojan War began as a masterpiece of divine pettiness. It all started at the wedding of the hero Peleus and the scene amphitheater. All the gods were invited except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious at being snubbed, she crafted a beautiful golden apple and inscribed on it the words, "Take a list." For the fairest, she tossed it into the middle of the wedding feast. Immediately, 3 goddesses laid claim to it, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. The argument became so heated it threatened to tear Olympus apart. Zeus, wisely wanting no part in this decision, outsourced the judgment to a mortal, Paris, a handsome, simple shepherd living on Mount Ida. In reality, Paris was a prince of Troy, hidden away at birth because of a prophecy that he would be the downfall of his city. The 3 goddesses appeared before him and offered bribes. Hera offered him power, rule over all of Asia. Athena offered him wisdom and glory in battle. Aphrodite, goddess of love, made him a simpler, far more tempting offer. She promised him the most beautiful mortal woman in the world for his wife. Paris, a young man ruled by his heart rather than his head, chose Aphrodite. He gave her the golden apple. In doing so, he earned the eternal hatred of Hera and Athena, not just for himself, but for his entire city. This event, the judgment of Paris, is a crucial piece of the puzzle. It preorders the conflict. Your fate was sealed not in Sparta, but on a remote mountainside by a shepherd prince and 3 vain goddesses. Your beauty, which you had no control over, was offered up as a bribe in a celestial beauty contest. Soon after, Paris arrives in Sparta on a diplomatic visit. Menelaus welcomes him as a guest, a sacred trust in Greek culture. While Menelaus is away, Paris, with Aphrodite's divine aid, persuades you to leave with him. And here we come to the single most debated question in all of classical literature. A question that has puzzled poets and historians for 3,000 years. Did you go willingly? Was it a true abduction, Paris taking you by force? Or were you seduced, overwhelmed by the divinely inspired charms of the Trojan prince and the promise of a life of passion you lacked with Menelaus? Or was it something else entirely? Did you make a conscious choice to leave, seeking agency in a life where you had none? The epic poems are tantalizingly ambiguous. Sometimes you are portrayed as a shameless traitor, other times as a tragic, helpless victim. Your motivation is the blank space at the heart of the epic, a void that can never be filled. But whatever the reason, you leave. You abandon your husband, your child, and your kingdom, and you sail with Paris to Troy. The moment your ship leaves the shore, the oath of Tyndareus is triggered. Menelaus, discovering your betrayal, calls upon all the former suitors. Bound by their sacred vow, they have no choice. They gather their armies, launch 1,000 ships, and set sail for Troy to bring you back. Your face has just launched a tour that will last for a decade and claim the lives of a generation of heroes. The story of the Golden Apple isn't just a quaint piece of divine drama. It is the inciting incident, the spark that lights the fuse of the Trojan War. It is a perfect illustration of how the smallest act of divine vanity can cascade into a catastrophe for mortals. The whole affair is a setup, a cosmic trap, and you in the city of Troy are caught in its jaws. Let's look closer at that moment, the judgment of Paris. It is not just a beauty pageant. It is a choice between 3 fundamental aspects of the Greek worldview. Hera offers political power, the dominion of a king. Athena offers military glory and wisdom, the virtues of a warrior hero. Aphrodite offers love, passion, and beauty. By choosing Aphrodite, Paris isn't just picking the prettiest goddess. He is making a statement. He is rejecting the traditional male values of power and war in favor of the personal, emotional, and, in the eyes of the other Greeks, softer value of romantic love. This choice is seen as a profound failure of judgment, a dereliction of his princely duty. He chose a woman over a kingdom, and for that, his city is doomed. The golden apple itself is a fascinating symbol. Apples in Greek mythology are often tied to love, immortality, or discord. Think of the golden apples in the garden of the Hesperides, which Heracles had to retrieve. They were a wedding gift to Hera. So, an apple, a symbol of marriage, becomes the very thing that unravels a marriage and starts a war. Eris, the goddess of discord, was brilliant. She didn't have to create chaos out of thin air. She just had to introduce a catalyst and let the inherent vanity of the other gods do the work for her. You, of course, are not present for this judgment. You are hundreds of miles away in Sparta, completely unaware that your face has become the grand prize in a divine bribe. Aphrodite's promise to Paris is made without your consent, without your knowledge. You are treated as a commodity, a beautiful object to be gifted from a goddess to a mortal prince as a reward for a favorable ruling. This moment is the ultimate objectification. It strips you of all agency before the story even truly begins. Your future has been decided, and you are the last to know. This concept of divine interference is central to the Greek understanding of fate. The gods don't just sit back and watch. They meddle. They have favorites. They have grudges. The Trojan War, from one perspective, isn't really a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. It is a proxy war between the gods. On one side, you have Hera and Athena, furious at Paris' judgment and determined to see Troy burn. On the other, you have Aphrodite, who is bound to protect her chosen champion, Paris, and Apollo, who has always favored the Trojans. Zeus tries to remain neutral, but is constantly being manipulated by the other gods. The human heroes on the battlefield below, Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, are like chess pieces, moved by divine hands. Their bravery and their suffering part of a much larger cosmic game. This brings up a deep philosophical question that the Greeks themselves wrestled with. How much is fate, and how much is free will? Are the heroes on the field truly making their own choices, or are they merely acting out a script written by the gods? The epic poet Homer is a master of this ambiguity. In one moment, a hero will make a bold, personal choice. In the next, the poet will tell us that Athena put the idea in his head. Historians and philosophers have been debating this for centuries. Is this a sophisticated way of exploring the complex motivations of human psychology? Or is it a literal belief that the gods are constantly whispering in our ears? You also learn a curious detail about Paris. He was just a lover. He was an archer. In the Greek heroic world, this was not a prestigious form of combat. The true heroes, like Achilles and Ajax, fought up close and personal with spear and sword. Archery was seen as cowardly, the weapon of someone who strikes from a distance, refusing to face his enemy face to face. Paris' reliance on the bow further cements his reputation among the Greeks as an effeminate, unheroic figure who stole another man's wife and then hid behind his city walls, refusing to engage in honorable combat. This characterization makes the Greek rage against him even more potent. They are not just fighting to reclaim you. They are fighting to punish a man who has violated every code they hold dear. The code of hospitality, the code of marriage, and the code of heroic warfare. So, the stage is now drenched in gasoline. The golden apple was the match. Your abduction, or elopement, was the act of throwing it onto the pyre. The fleets are sailing. The heroes are sharpening their swords. The gods have chosen their sides. A decade of death and suffering is about to begin, and at the center of it all is a single, glittering, and now deeply cursed prize. You? The whole world is about to go to war, and it all started because a goddess who wasn't invited to a party decided to get even. The war grinds on, a relentless decade of dust and death. And through it all, you are the silent, beautiful excuse. Your name becomes a curse into languages. In the Greek camp, it's a bitter reminder of why they are so far from home, dying on a foreign shore. In the Trojan homes, it's the name attached to every widow's grief, every orphan's cry. You are no longer Helen of Sparta, or even Helen of Troy. You are Helen, an idea, a grievance, the walking, breathing embodiment of the war itself. The reason for all this suffering. This is the great, crushing burden you carry. You are blamed. Not Paris, the kidnapper. Not Menelaus, the vengeful husband. Not Agamemnon, the greedy king. Not the gods, the celestial puppet masters. You, the poets and soldiers on both sides, find it easier to distill a complex web of politics, greed, and divine meddling into a simple, digestible narrative. A woman's faithlessness destroyed a city. The story of a disloyal woman is a much more satisfying and less complicated reason for war than a trade dispute or the petty squabbles of gods. You are the ultimate scapegoat. The term itself, you learn, has its roots in ancient rituals. In some cultures, a goat would be symbolically laden with all the sins of a community and then driven out into the wilderness to die, cleansing the people of their guilt. You are Troy's, and indeed Greece's, scapegoat, but you are not driven into the wilderness. You are kept on display in the heart of the city, a constant, living reminder of the sin that started it all. This framing of a woman as the cause of great turmoil is a recurring theme in your world. Hesiod, one of the earliest Greek poets, tells the story of Pandora, the first woman. She was created by the gods as a punishment for mankind after Prometheus stole fire. She was given a jar, often mistranslated as a box, and told not to open it. Her curiosity, a trait given to her by the gods, overwhelmed her. She opened the jar, and out flew all the evils of the world: sickness, death, sorrow, and strife. Only hope was left behind. It's a foundational myth for the Greek worldview, and its message is clear. The origin of all human suffering can be traced back to the actions of a single, beautiful, and dangerously curious woman. This myth of Pandora hangs over you like a shadow. You are Pandora in the flesh. You didn't open a jar, but your envelopment with Paris unleashed the evils of war upon the world. The misogyny is baked into the very cosmology of your culture. It provides a convenient framework for understanding disaster. When things go wrong, when cities fall and heroes die, it is easy and comforting to point to a woman and say, it was her fault. Historians have long argued about the function of these stories. Are they simply reflections of a deeply patriarchal society, or are they more complex psychological explorations of blame and responsibility? The consensus leans towards the former. These narratives serve to reinforce a social order where men are the actors and agents of history, and women are often the disruptive, emotional forces that cause chaos. By blaming you, the men of Greece and Troy can absolve themselves of their own greed, their own pride, and their own lust for violence. The war becomes a noble, tragic necessity forced upon them by your feminine weakness, rather than a brutal conflict of their own making. You feel this blame most acutely in your interactions with the other Trojan women. They see their husbands and sons arming themselves each morning to fight war that, from their perspective, has your name written all over it. The historian Herodotus, writing centuries later, would offer a more cynical and perhaps more realistic take. He questioned the whole premise, suggesting that no woman was worth launching a decade-long war over. He reasoned that if you had truly been abducted against your will, the Trojans would have given you back immediately to avoid such a catastrophe. The fact that they didn't, he argued, implied that you either stayed willingly or that the story of your abduction was just a pretext for a war that the Greeks wanted to fight anyway for reasons of plunder and conquest. This pretext theory is a cold comfort. Whether you are the reason or just the excuse, the outcome is the same. The bodies pile up on the plains outside the city walls. You watch from the ramparts, a spectator at a war for which you are the title card. You see the greatest of the Trojan heroes, your kind friend Hector, killed by the demigod Achilles. You see his body desecrated, dragged behind a chariot in the dust. You see the grief of his wife, Andromache, and his father, King Priam. And you know that everyone in the city, in their heart of hearts, connects this horror back to the day you arrived. You are the beautiful face that launched 1,000 ships, and now you are the beautiful face that has to watch them all sink in a sea of blood. The war ends not with a grand battle, but with a trick, a piece of brilliant, desperate cunning conceived by the master strategist, Odysseus. The Greeks, pretending to give up and sail for home, leave behind a parting gift on the shores of Troy, a colossal wooden horse. The Trojans awaken to an eerie silence. The Greek camp is deserted. The 1,000 ships are gone. It seems the siege is finally over. They pour out of the city gates. Ecstatic, they gather around the giant horse. A magnificent, baffling structure. What is it? A tribute to the gods. A surrender token. And here, in this moment of collective relief and confusion, you witness the final, tragic echo of Cassandra's. She, the prophetess whom no one believes, appears, frantic and wild-eyed. She screams that the horse is a trap. I fear the Greeks, even when they bear gifts. She cries. She tells them it's full of armed men, that it will be the city's doom. The Trojans, as always, dismiss her. They see a madwoman, not a prophet. They are too caught up in their victory celebrations. Another man, a priest named Laocoon, also warns against the horse. He even hurls his spear into its hollow flank, and the sound of clattering arms can be heard from within. But at that moment, 2 monstrous sea serpents emerge from the ocean, sent by a Trojan god's enemy, either Poseidon or Athena, depending on the storyteller. The serpents seize Laocoon and his 2 young sons, crushing them to death in their coils before slithering away to a temple. The Trojans interpret this horrific event not as a confirmation of the danger, but as a divine punishment for Laocoon's sacrilege against the sacred offering. His death seals their fate. Convinced the horse is a holy relic, they tear down a section of their own impregnable walls to drag it inside the city. That night, Troy celebrates. The city is filled with feasting, drinking, and song. They believe the war is over, that they have won, while the city sleeps in a drunken stupor. The trap is sprung, a panel on the horse slides open, and Odysseus and a band of elite Greek warriors climb down. They sneak to the city gates and open them for the rest of the Greek army, which had only pretended to sail away and was hiding just beyond the horizon. The slaughter begins. The Greeks, filled with a decade of pent-up rage, swarm through the streets. They kill the men, sleeping in their beds. They set fire to the houses. The great, proud city of Troy, which had stood for generations, is destroyed in a single night of fire and blood. You are in the palace as the screams begin. You see King Priam cut down at his own family altar. You see the Trojan women, your companions for 10 years, rounded up, their noble lives reduced to that of slaves, prizes to be distributed among the victorious Greek captains. You witness the brutal fate of Hector's young son, Astyalus. In one of the most chilling acts of the war, the Greeks decide he cannot be allowed to live, for fear that he might one day grow up to avenge his father and his city. Odysseus, or in some versions the son of Achilles, takes the small boy and throws him from the high walls of Troy to his death. This act marks the absolute moral collapse of the heroic victors. It is not war, it is extermination. And what about you? The cause of it all, as the city burns around you. Your husband Menelaus finds you. The poet's accounts of this moment are varied and conflicted. In some, he raises his sword to kill you, to finally exact his revenge for your betrayal. But at the last moment, he looks at your face, still impossibly beautiful even amidst the smoke and tears, and his will to kill you falters. He cannot do it. Your peer, the thing that started the war, is the very thing that saves your life in its final moments. There's a strange, almost cynical detail that some scholars point out about this scene. The ancient playwright Euripides, in his play The Trojan Women, suggests a different reading. He has the Trojan queen Hecuba near that Menelaus didn't spare you out of love or renewed passion. He spared you because the sight of your beauty simply reawakened his possessive desire. He wasn't forgiving you. He was reclaiming his most prized possession, the one thing he had fought 10 years to get back. Your beauty doesn't earn you forgiveness. It just reasserts your status as an object to be owned. This question of Menelaus' motive is, like so much of your story, a matter of intense debate. Was it a moment of human weakness, of love conquering vengeance, or was it the ultimate act of patriarchal possession, a man unable to destroy the beautiful thing he felt he owned? The answer is lost to time. Buried under the rubble of Troy, the great city is now a smoking ruin. The men are dead, the women are slaves, the children are gone. The prophecy about Paris has been fulfilled. The golden apple has borne its bitter fruit. The war for Helen is finally over. As Menelaus leads you away from the smoldering embers of your adopted home and back toward the Greek ships, you are no longer a queen or a prize. You are a survivor, a war criminal, a widow, and a spoil of war, all at once. And you are heading home to face a kingdom that has spent a decade cursing your name. The journey home is not a victory parade for you and Menelaus. It's a long, purgatorial voyage that lasts for years. The gods are not finished with the Greeks, having sacked a holy city and committed numerous sacrileges. Many of the heroes who fought at Troy are cursed to wander the seas or to return home to betrayal and death. Your ship is blown off course, tossed by storms sent by angry gods. You wander the wind-dark sea, visiting strange lands like Egypt and Phoenicia, exiles from a home you haven't seen in a decade. During this long journey, you and Menelaus settle into a strange, uneasy peace. The violent emotions of war have cooled into a kind of weary resignation. What is there to say? The past is a graveyard of things that cannot be unsaid or undone. You are bound together not by love or passion, but by a shared trauma. You are the two people on earth who best understand the catastrophic weight of your own story. Finally, after years of wandering, you arrive back in Sparta. The palace is the same, but everything is different. You are different. The kingdom has been managed in your absence. That you return is an awkward, unsettling event. You are not a returning hero. You are a ghost, a scandal made flesh, walking back into the life you abandoned. Your daughter, Hermione, is now a woman. She has grown up with the story of a mother who was a beautiful, faithless creature who abandoned her for a foreign prince. How do you bridge that gap? How do you explain a decade of war? A choice that you yourself may not fully understand. The epic poems don't dwell on these domestic moments, but you live in them. The silence at the dinner table is heavier than any battle cry. And here, your story enters its final, most ambiguous phase. You are reinstated as the Queen of Sparta, ruling alongside Menelaus. The two of you grow old together. When Elamuchus, the son of Odysseus, visits Sparta in search of news of his long-lost father, he finds you and Menelaus hosting a feast. You are a gracious, regal queen. You move with a serene, almost divine composure, but there are cracks in the facade. During the feast, the memory of the war and its dead heroes comes up, and the mood turns somber. Menelaus begins to weep for his lost comrades. To ease the pain, you do something extraordinary. You slip a drug into the wine bowl, a substance you acquired in Egypt called nepenthe. It is a potion of forgetfulness, a powerful antidepressant that lulls all pain and anger and brings oblivion to every sorrow. Whoever drinks it, the poet says, will not shed a tear for a whole day, even if their own mother and father died, or if their son was killed before their very eyes. This act is deeply revealing. You, the woman whose memory has caused a decade of suffering, now possess the power to make others forget. You have become a dispenser of oblivion. Is this an act of compassion, a queen easing the pain of her guests, or is it a more selfish act, a way of shutting down painful conversations and protecting yourself from the ghosts of the past? It's a moment of quiet, mysterious power. You are no longer just a beautiful face. You are a woman with hidden knowledge, a master of potions and psychology, controlling the emotional temperature of the room. The question of your freedom is one that hangs over these final years. Are you free? You are no longer a prize being fought over. You are a queen, secure in your position, but you are also trapped in your own legend. You can never escape being Helen of Troy. Your name will forever be synonymous with beauty, betrayal, and war. You are a living monument, and people will always look at you and see not a woman, but a story. This is the ultimate prison. Your identity is not your own. It belongs to the poets, to the soldiers, to history. Even your death is shrouded in myth and contradiction. In the most common version, told by the poet Homer, you don't die a mortal death at all, because you are a daughter of Zeus. You and Menelaus are granted immortality and get to spend eternity in the Elysian fields, a blissful paradise. It's a remarkably peaceful, happy ending for a life that caused so much destruction. But there are other, darker versions. A lesser-known myth says that after Menelaus' death, you were driven out of Sparta by your angry stepsons. You fled to the island of Rhodes, seeking refuge with an old friend. But that friend's husband had been killed in the Trojan War. To avenge his death, the widow had her serving women disguise themselves as furies. They seized you while you were bathing and hanged you from a tree. In this version, you finally pay for your crimes, your life ending in violence and retribution. Classicists are fascinated by these conflicting endings. Does she get a happy ending because of her divine parentage, placing her above mortal judgment? Or does she face a grim punishment, a final balancing of the scales? The fact that both versions exist tells you that the ancient Greeks themselves were never able to fully decide what to do with you. You were too beautiful, too disruptive, too powerful a symbol to be easily resolved. You were a problem they could never quite solve, and so you exist forever in that state of ambiguity. Queen and outcast, victim and villain, immortal and executed. A woman trapped not in a city, but in the prison of her own beautiful, terrible story. Let's take a step back from the dizzying drama of myth and war. Let's talk about the standard, the impossible, soul-crushing standard of beauty that someone like you, Helen, was said to embody. In the world of ancient Greece, beauty was just a matter of opinion. It was a matter of mathematics. You learn about the concept of symmetry, the harmonious relationship of parts to the whole. It's an idea that obsesses the Greek mind, not just in art, but in philosophy, architecture, and music. They believed that the universe itself was ordered by rational, mathematical principles, and since the human body was a microcosm of the universe, a perfect human form should reflect that same divine, mathematical order. This is where you encounter the infamous golden ratio. It's a mathematical constant, an irrational number approximately equal to 1. Lioba, often denoted by the Greek letter phi. You don't need to understand the complex math behind it, only its brutal application. The idea was that the most aesthetically pleasing proportions were all related to this ratio. The ratio of your total height to the height of your navel. The ratio of the length of your face to its width. The distance from your lip to your nose compared to the length of your nose. On and on. An endless series of measurements. A beautiful face, a beautiful body, was a walking, breathing geometry problem. The sculptor Polykleitos, in the 5th century BC, took this idea to its extreme. He wrote a treatise, now lost, called the Canon, which means rule or measure. In it, he laid out the precise mathematical proportions for the ideal male nude. He then created a bronze statue, the Dori Ph or OS, the spear bearer, as the physical embodiment of his Canon. This statue became the benchmark of beauty, the definitive statement on the perfect human form. While the Canon was explicitly about the male form, the underlying principle of symmetry was applied to female beauty as well. You look at the statues of goddesses like Aphrodite, carved by masters like Praxiteles, and you see the same obsession with proportion and harmony. Smooth, unblemished skin, a perfectly straight nose that flows seamlessly from the forehead. The famous Greek nose, full, but not too full, lips, large, wide-set, almond-shaped eyes, an oval face, a long, swan-like neck. Every feature is idealized, perfected, and balanced against every other feature. This creates a bizarre and demoralizing situation. The standard of beauty for a real, living woman is a cold, lifeless, marble statue. You are being judged against an impossible ideal, a mathematical abstraction given human form. It's a standard that is, by its very nature, inhuman. No real person has that perfect symmetry, that flawless skin. No real person is carved from a single block of perfect, white marble. This leads to a strange cultural phenomenon you observe. Women use cosmetics not just to enhance their features, but to try and mimic this sculptural ideal. You see them applying lead carbonate, a highly toxic substance, to whiten their skin, aiming for that pale, marble-like complexion that signified a life lived indoors, away from the sun, a life of leisure and status. They use powdered charcoal to darken their eyelashes and eyebrows, and perhaps even to create the illusion of that trendy unibrow if they weren't blessed with one naturally. They might apply crushed mulberries or other berry juices to their cheeks and lips for a faint, natural blush of color. But there was a very fine line to walk. While these aids were used, wearing too much makeup was considered a sign of vanity, deception, and even low moral character, associated with prostitutes rather than respectable wives. The goal was to use artifice to achieve a look of natural, effortless perfection, a goal that is uncannily familiar thousands of years later. It's a game you cannot win. You must be perfect, but you must not be seen to be trying to be perfect. Historians have a lot to say about this sculptural ideal. Some argue that it reflects the Greek philosophical quest for the ideal form, the perfect, unchanging essence of a thing. As described by Plato, the statues weren't meant to be portraits of real people. They were meant to be representations of the divine, perfect idea of man or woman or goddess. This creates a peculiar tension, the very thing that makes you human. Your flaws, your asymmetries, the unique imperfections that make up your face, is what makes you fall short of the ideal. To be considered truly beautiful is to be considered slightly inhuman. You are aspiring to look like a thing of stone, to erase the very signs of your own messy, living humanity. You stand before a polished bronze mirror, which gives a wavy, warm, and frustratingly indistinct reflection. You try to judge your own face against the memory of the cold, perfect statues in the temple. Is your nose straight enough? Is the ratio of your forehead to your chin correct? The entire exercise feels absurd and suffocating. You are trapped in a system that defines your worth by how closely you approximate a mathematical formula. Your beauty, even if it's world famous, will always be flawed when measured against the golden ratio. And this, you realize, is perhaps the most insidious part of the system. It guarantees that every woman, no matter how beautiful, will always feel inadequate. You stand in the cool, dim light of a temple, the air thick with the scent of old incensed burnt offerings. Before you, on a high pedestal, is a statue of a goddess. It might be Hera, Aphrodite, or Athena. The identity doesn't matter as much as the form. It is carved from pristine Parian marble, a stone so fine it seems to glow from within. The figure is serene, powerful, and perfectly, inhumanly proportioned. This is your competition. This is the daily, silent contest every Greek woman faces. You are flesh and blood, with your moods, your blemishes, your asymmetries. Your rival is stone. She does not age. She does not weep. She does not have a single hair out of place. Her expression of calm, divine authority never wavers. She is the ideal, and you are the flawed, temporary copy. The psychological effect of this is profound. The art in your world isn't just decorative. It is prescriptive. It is a constant, public display of the standard you are expected to meet. The statues of goddesses are not just objects of worship. They are the ultimate influencers. They embody the physical and, supposedly, moral qualities of ideal womanhood. Aphrodite is not just the goddess of love. She is the visual definition of desirability. Athena is not just the goddess of wisdom. She is the image of severe, stately grace. You notice the details. The goddess's drapery falls in elegant, impassible folds, a style known as wet drapery that clings to the body, revealing the perfect form beneath while maintaining an air of modesty. It's a style that is both concealing and revealing, a paradox of cloth and stone. You think of your own heavy, woolen peplos, how it bunches and wrinkles, how it never hangs quite right. You try to arrange it to mimic the statue's grace, but it's a losing battle. Your clothes are functional. Hers are a statement of divine perfection. You look at her skin, a smooth, unbroken expanse of white. Then you think of your own. The sun of the courtyard has given you a light golden tan, A sign of health, but a deviation from the marble pale ideal of the elite. You have a small scar on your knuckle from a weaving mishap. You have tiny lines around your eyes from squinting in the sun. These are the marks of a real, lived life. On the statue, they would be seen as flaws, imperfections to be polished away. This competition with stone creates a strange relationship with your own body. You begin to see it not as a part of yourself, but as an object to be managed, disciplined, and perfected. It is a project, and the project's goal is to make the organic look like the geologic. Here you learn about our little tidbit about the creation of these statues. While we see them today as pure, stark white, in your time, they were often painted. The goddess's hair might be a vibrant gold, her lips a startling red, her eyes detailed with colored pupils. This practice, known as polychromy, is a shock to many modern sensibilities, which have come to equate the pure white of the marble with classical purity itself. For you, it makes the statues even more uncanny. They are not just stone figures, they are hyper-realistic, brightly colored mannequins of divinity. They look even more perfect, even more intimidatingly real, than the stripped-down versions that will survive the centuries. The debate among historians is what this intense focus on the idealized, sculpted form did to the perception of real women. Did it cause widespread anxiety and body image issues, in a way we might recognize today? Or was the distinction between divine art and mortal reality clearer to the ancient Greeks? Did they see the statues as aspirations, not literal blueprints? It's impossible to know for sure, as we have so few first-hand accounts from women themselves. But the philosophy of the time gives us a clue. Plato's theory of forms, which became hugely influential, taught that the physical world we perceive is just a world of shadows, a poor imitation of the real world of perfect, eternal forms or ideas. The statue of beauty would be considered a higher reality than an actual beautiful person. The ideal is more real than the real. This way of thinking doesn't leave much room for appreciating the unique, flawed beauty of an individual human being. So, when a man looks at you, is he seeing you, or is he measuring you against the Aphrodite of Cain? Idols he saw in the temple last week. You are constantly being compared to a divine archetype, and if your beauty is deemed to come too close to that divine standard, as Helen's was, you cross a dangerous line. You are no longer just a beautiful woman. You are a challenge to the gods, a piece of art so perfect it seems to have strayed from the temple and started breathing on its own. This is the ultimate paradox. You are supposed to strive for the ideal, but if you get too close, you are punished for your hubris. You leave the temple, blinking in the harsh sunlight. The image of the goddess is burned into your mind. You are trapped. You are supposed to emulate a statue, a being of cold, dead stone, but to succeed too well is to invite disaster. Your body is not a home. It is a battleground, and the war is between your own living, breathing humanity and a silent, unforgiving, and impossibly beautiful army of marble goddesses. In this world obsessed with the perfect, sculpted ideal, you begin to explore the tools of illusion. If the standard is inhuman, then achieving it requires a certain amount of artifice. You enter the quiet, fragrant world of the Greek woman's cosmetic chest, a place of powders, oils, and subtle deceptions. The goal, you learn, is not to look made up. The goal is cosmesis, the art of arranging and ordering, not just of the face, but of the whole person, including clothes, hair, and jewelry. It's about creating an overall impression of grace, health, and, most importantly, effortless perfection. To be seen as trying too hard is the ultimate failure. It is a subtle, high-stakes game of smoke and mirrors. Your primary tool is simethion, or lead carbonate. It's a dense, white powder that you mix with water to create a paste. You apply it carefully to your face, neck, and arms. It's a foundation, a skin lightener, and a concealer all in one. Its effect is dramatic, giving you a smooth, pale, almost luminous complexion, much like the marble of a statue. This pallor is the ultimate status symbol. It signifies that you are a woman of leisure, a member of the elite who does not have to toil in the sun like a common field worker or a potter's wife. Your pale skin is a testament to your guarded domestic life, but Ion is a devil's bargain. You know it's dangerous. You've seen older women whose skin is ruined, grayed and wrinkled by years of lead use. It's a slow-acting poison, absorbed through the skin, but the social pressure to have that pale, aristocratic complexion is immense. It is a choice between your long-term health and your immediate social standing. Every morning, you paint on your mask of nobility a little bit of poison to make you beautiful. Through color, the tools are more natural, but no less deliberate. For a subtle blush on your cheeks, you might use the root of the Alkane tea plant, or perhaps crushed mulberries, mixed with a little olive oil to create a smooth paste. For your lips, a touch of the same, or perhaps a more vibrant pigment made from iron oxide clays. The key is subtlety. You are not meant to look painted, but to have the natural, healthy flush of a young maiden. It is the art of the no makeup look, an invention you might have thought was modern. Your eyes are the focus. You use kohl, a fine black powder made from soot, ground minerals like antimony, or burnt almonds. You mix it with oil and use a small, delicate stick, a kolan, to apply it. You line your eyes to make them appear larger and more defined, more like the wide, almond-shaped eyes of the goddesses on the vases. You also use it to darken your eyebrows, and here you encounter that peculiar, now famous Greek beauty standard, the unibrow. A faint, soft connection of the brows across the bridge of the nose was seen as a mark of great beauty and passion. If you weren't born with it, you could fake it with a careful application of kohl. Your hair is another canvas. The ideal is fair hair, a golden or reddish hue, something relatively rare among the naturally dark-haired Greeks and thus more desirable. To achieve this, women would use lightening agents. This wasn't a simple bottle of bleach. It was a harsh mixture of potash water and yellow flowers, or sometimes a vinegar-based solution, which you would apply to your hair and then sit in the sun for hours, hoping it would lighten your locks without completely destroying them. It was a time-consuming, oft undamaging process, all in the pursuit of that sun-kissed look. This is where you stumble upon a strange and often overlooked aspect of Greek beauty culture, the use of wigs and hairpieces. For women whose hair was thinning, or not the right color, or just not voluminous enough for the elaborate, braided hairstyles of the day, wigs were a common solution. Archaeologists have found evidence of them, and ancient texts mention them, so that elaborate coiffure you admire on a wealthy woman at a festival might not be her hair at all. It's another layer of artifice, another part of the careful construction of the perfect female image. The historians who listen to see a deep social meaning in all this. The use of cosmetics was a way of marking social status. Only the wealthy could afford the time and the expensive ingredients, like imported lead powder, to create this look. That it was also a form of social control. The standards were so specific and so difficult to achieve that they kept women occupied, focused on the domestic, private project of their own appearance. The philosopher Xenophon, in his work O Economicus, has a husband advising his young wife against wearing too much makeup. He argues that it's a form of deception and that a husband wants to see his wife's real face. But his argument is less about honesty and more about control. He doesn't want her to be a deceiver. He wants her to be a known, transparent quantity under his management. The use of cosmetics, then, is a tightrope walk. You must use them to conform to the ideal of the pale, serene, perfect woman, but you must not use them so much that you are seen as vulgar, deceptive, or theatrical. You are an artist, and your medium is your own face. But your masterpiece is meant to look like it was not painted at all. It is a phantom pursuit of an impossible goal, a daily ritual of quiet deception, all in the hope of transforming your mortal flesh into a living, breathing work of art. You've learned the rules. Strive for perfection, but not too much perfection. Your beauty should be a pleasing reflection of the divine, not a rival to it. To be beautiful is good. To be too beautiful is to commit an act of hubris. A prideful arrogance that challenges the natural order of things. It's like reaching for the sun. You are destined to get burned. This concept of dangerous perfection is a cornerstone of the Greek tragic worldview. They believed in a balanced, ordered cosmos. Anything that is too extreme, too much wealth, too much power, too much happiness, and yes, too much beauty, was seen as a disruption to this balance. The gods, or the universe itself, would inevitably act to restore equilibrium. This is the role of Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, who would bring down the proud and the overly fortunate. To be perfect was to be dangerously close to the divine, and, for a mortal, that was an act of 僭越, an act of overstepping your bounds. You see this idea played out in the story of the Elo Dei, two giant sons of Poseidon who were so strong and grew so fast that they decided to wage war on the gods themselves. Their power was a threat to the cosmic order, so they were destroyed. You see it in the story of King Midas, whose wish for a golden touch brought him immense wealth, but also starvation and misery. His perfect gift was his ruin. Your beauty is seen in the same light. It is a gift so potent that it unbalances the world around you. Helen's beauty didn't just make her desirable. It was so extreme that it disrupted the political order of Greece, challenged the authority of kings, and ultimately required a 10-year war to restore the balance. Your very existence is a form of pollution, a miasma. It's not that you have done anything wrong, but your state of being, your too muchness, is inherently destabilizing. People look at you with a mixture of awe and fear because you represented disturbance in the force. You are a walking, talking embodiment of excess. This brings you to a fascinating and rather niche belief you overhear from a philosopher student of Pythagoras. He speaks of the inaudible music of the spheres, the idea that the planets and stars move according to mathematical ratios, creating a perfect, divine harmony that we cannot hear. The goal of a good life, he argues, is to bring your own soul into harmony with this cosmic music. In this worldview, extreme beauty is a kind of discordant note, a chord played too loudly, disrupting the celestial symphony. It's a beautiful metaphor, and a terrifying one. Your face is a form of noise pollution. The social implications are very real. A woman who is seen as dangerously beautiful might be treated with suspicion. Her virtue would be constantly questioned. It would be assumed that she was arrogant, that she was aware of her power over men and would inevitably use it for selfish or destructive ends. The Trojan elders' reaction to Helen is the perfect example. They acknowledge her divine beauty, but immediately recognize it as a curse, something that should be sent away before it brings ruin. Historians debate whether this was a genuine, widespread belief or a literary trope used by male writers to explore themes of chaos and order. The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the middle. The idea of too much of a good thing was a deeply ingrained cultural value. It's present in their philosophy, their politics, where they feared tyrants, men with too much power, and their personal ethics. The famous sayings inscribed at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi were, "Know thyself and nothing in excess." These were not just catchy phrases. They were the central pillars of Greek wisdom. Your beauty violates that second pillar in the most fundamental way. You are excess. You cannot dial it down or hide it. To exist is to be in violation of one of the culture's most cherished principles. This is the cruelest trap of all. You are born with a quality that your society professes to admire above all others. But the very extremity of that quality makes you a pariah, a threat, a monster. It's like being praised for being a brilliant fire. While everyone around you is terrified you will burn the whole house down, you begin to understand why the stories of beautiful women so often end in tragedy. It's not just about the jealousy of gods or the obsession of men. It's about a deeply held cultural belief that perfection is unsustainable and dangerous for a mortal. The tragic falls of Medusa, Cassandra, and Helen are not just random acts of divine cruelty. They are narrative necessities. They are cautionary tales that serve to reinforce the cosmic order. They are proof that any mortal who comes too close to being a god will, one way or another, be struck down. Your face is not a blessing. It is a prophecy of your own destruction. While the poets and soldiers are obsessed with the destructive power of your physical beauty, There is another world of thought running parallel to it, a world of men who are trying to understand beauty, not as a catalyst for war, but as a stepping stone to something higher. You drift into the fringes of the philosophical world, a place of dialogue, debate, and a radical reframing of what beauty truly means. You hear whispers of a man named Socrates, a strange, snub-nosed man who wanders the agora, not selling anything, but asking questions. Annoying, probing, brilliant questions. He doesn't lecture. He engages people in conversation, a method called deal and chess, systematically dismantling their lazy assumptions until they are forced to admit they know nothing. His central concern is not with the beauty of the body, but with the health of the soul. For Socrates, and for his most famous student, Plato, the kind of beauty that Helen possessed was, at best, a distraction and, at worst, a danger to the soul. They would argue that the obsessive love inspired by physical beauty, what they called eros, was a form of madness. It fixates on a temporary, decaying object, the human body, and mistakes it for the ultimate good. The man who is driven to distraction by a beautiful face is a man who has lost his reason, the very thing that makes him human. Plato, in his dialogue The Symposium, takes this idea and builds it into a powerful philosophical system. In the dialogue, the group of men at a drinking party all get speeches in praise of eros. When it's Socrates' turn, he recounts a lesson he learned from a wise woman named Diotima of Mantinia. The fact that Plato puts the most important philosophical lesson in the mouth of a woman is a remarkable and much debated anomaly. Diotima, as channeled by Socrates, describes a ladder of love. It's a path of ascent from the lowest, most vulgar form of love to the highest, most divine. You start, she explains, by loving one beautiful body. This is the common, everyday infatuation you see all around you. But a true philosopher, a lover of wisdom, will soon realize that the beauty in this one body is related to the beauty in all other beautiful bodies. So, he moves up a rung and learns to appreciate the beauty of all bodies, not just one. Then, he ascends further. He realizes that the beauty of the soul is far more valuable and enduring than the beauty of the body. He will now prefer a virtuous, intelligent soul in an ugly body to a beautiful body with a corrupt soul. He has moved from the physical to the ethical. From here, he learns to see the beauty in laws, institutions, and knowledge, the abstract beauty of a well-ordered society and a well-ordered mind. Finally, at the very top of the ladder, he is granted a sudden, breathtaking vision. He beholds beauty itself, absolute, pure, and eternal. This is the form of beauty, the divine essence from which all beautiful things on earth get their pale, fleeting reflection. It is not a beautiful face, or a beautiful statue, or a beautiful poem. It is beauty, unadorned and everlasting. To achieve this vision is the ultimate goal of philosophy. It is a state of enlightenment. This is a revolutionary way of thinking. It takes the most powerful, disruptive force in the mythological world, your kind of beauty, and says, this is just the first, lowest strung on a ladder. It is a starting point, not a destination. It devalues physical beauty, reframing it as a signpost pointing toward a higher, more important truth. For the philosopher, to remain fixated on Helen is to be a person who spends their entire life staring at the signpost instead of continuing on the journey. You learn a quirky detail about Socrates himself. He was, by all contemporary accounts, famously ugly. He was described as having bulging, crab-like eyes, a flat, upturned nose, and thick lips. He looked more like a satyr, one of the half-goat, half-man creatures from mythology, than a respectable philosopher. Yet, he was surrounded by the most brilliant and handsome young men of Athens, who were captivated not by his appearance, but by the beauty of his mind and the virtue of his soul. Socrates himself was the living embodiment of his philosophy. He was proof that the beauty of the soul was far more compelling than the beauty of the body. The existence of this philosophical tradition doesn't erase the lived reality for most women. The average Athenian man was not a Platonic philosopher. He was still very much concerned with physical beauty in a wife, as it signified health, good breeding, and status. But the presence of this counter-narrative is significant. It suggests a deep cultural anxiety about the power of aesthetics. On the one hand, their art and poetry celebrate physical beauty to an obsessive degree. On the other, their philosophy warns against it, seeing it as a seductive trap for the soul. This split perspective is something historians find endlessly fascinating. Was Greek culture a paradox? Or were these just two different conversations happening in different rooms? The poets and soldiers in one, the philosophers in another. For you, listening to these ideas is both a relief and an insult. It's a relief because it offers a way out of the prison of the physical. It suggests that your true worth lies not in your face, but in your character, your mind, your soul. But it's also an insult, because it dismisses the very quality that has defined your entire existence as juvenile and insignificant. It tells you that the thing that has caused wars, inspired poems, and sealed your fate is just a spiritual kindergarten. You are trapped between two modes of objectification, the poets who reduce you to your body, and the philosophers who disregard your body in favor of your soul. In both cases, the integrated, whole person, the woman who is both body and soul, seems to get lost. Let's pull the camera back from the lofty realms of philosophy and mythology and look at the gritty, practical reality of your situation. Your beauty is not just a matter of divine favor or philosophical debate. It's a cold, hard economic asset. In the patriarchal world of ancient Greece, marriage is the central event of a respectable woman's life, and your beauty is the primary factor in determining your value on the marriage market. You are not choosing a husband, your Kyrios, your male guardian, your father, or if he is dead, an uncle or brother, is arranging a marriage for you. His goal is to make the best possible match, one that will enhance the family's wealth, status, and political connections, and your beauty is his single greatest bargaining chip. The key to this transaction is the dowry. Proax. This is the wealth, money, land, property, valuable goods that your father gives to the groom upon marriage. It is a fundamental part of the marriage agreement. The dowry does not legally become the husband's property. He has the right to use it for the duration of the marriage. But if the marriage ends in divorce, which was relatively easy for a man to initiate, or if you die without producing a male heir, he is legally obligated to return the dowry to your original family. This was a clever bit of social engineering. It gave your husband a strong financial incentive to stay married to you and to ensure your well-being. It also gave your birth family a continued interest in your welfare. And here's where your beauty comes in. A daughter who is exceptionally beautiful requires a smaller dowry to attract a high-status husband. Her beauty is, in effect, part of the payment. It makes up for a lack of cash. A wealthy merchant with a famously beautiful daughter might be able to marry her into a cash-poor, but ancient and highly respected aristocratic family, a mutually beneficial arrangement for both sides. Conversely, a daughter who is considered plain or homely, Deish Ross, would require a much larger dowry to secure a comparable husband. Her father would essentially have to pay a premium to offset her lack of physical appeal. This turns you into a walking, talking financial instrument. Your face has a literal market value. You can almost hear the negotiations in your father's study. Yes, my dowry offer is 10 minae, less than what you were offered for the daughter of Cleonetus. Your father might say to a prospective groom's father, "But have you seen my daughter? Her beauty will bring great honor to your household. Your sons will be handsome and strong." It's a crude, uncomfortable calculus, but it is the fundamental reality of your world. You learn a strange and sad detail about the dowry system from one of the older women in your family. In Athens, if a father died without a male heir but with a daughter, she became what was known as an epikilos, a kind of heiress, but she didn't inherit the property herself. She came with the property, the estate, and her hand in marriage would go to the close, eligible male relative. her father's brother or cousin, she had no say in the matter. This was to ensure that the family property, egos, remained within the patrilineal line. The woman in this case becomes little more than a vessel, a conduit for transferring wealth from one man to another. Her own desires are completely irrelevant. This system creates a deep sense of insecurity. Your value is extrinsic. It is determined by your father, your future husband, and the society around you. It is based on a fleeting physical quality that will inevitably fade with time. What happens when you grow older? When your famous beauty begins to decline? Does your value as a person decline with it? The myths and the social structure all seem to scream, yes. Historians often debate the agency of women within this rigid system. Were they completely powerless pawns in the marriage games of their male relatives? Or did they find subtle ways to exert influence? The evidence is scarce. A strong-willed mother might have had considerable informal influence over her husband's choice of a son-in-law. And once married, a clever woman who ran her household efficiently and produced healthy sons would earn considerable respecting de facto power within her own home. She could become the trusted partner and advisor to her husband. But this power was earned, conditional, and always operated within the strict confines of the patriarchal structure. You see this reality in the world around you. You see a friend, a kind and intelligent girl who is not a great beauty, married off to an old, cruel man because his family offered the politically advantageous alliance. You see another girl, less wealthy but stunningly beautiful, secure marriage to the handsome son of a powerful aristocrat. Her face her ticket to a life of status and comfort. You are all chips on a grand chessboard, moved and traded by the players, the men who control the game. Your beauty doesn't give you freedom. It just determines the value of the piece you represent. It might get you moved to a more desirable square on the board, but it doesn't give you the power to move yourself. For a moment, let's close the book of myths. Let's turn away from the dazzling, tragic stories of queens and goddesses. Let's try to imagine a different life. A life without a face that could launch 1,000 ships. The life of an ordinary Greek woman. What was her relationship with beauty? Was she liberated from this curse? Or did she face a different kind of challenge? You are no longer Helen, the daughter of a god. You are Lyra, the daughter of a potter who lives in a cramped, dusty lane near the Care Amicos, the potter's quarter of Athens. Your world is not one of spacious courtyards and idle weaving. It is a world of work. From the moment you are old enough to walk, you are helping. You fetch water from the public fountain house, your arms aching from the weight of the heavy clay hydria. This is not a chore, it is a vital necessity. It is also one of the few places you can socialize. At the fountain, women gather, away from the eyes and ears of men. They trade news, gossip, and complaints. It is the social hub of the working woman's world. No one here talks about the mathematical perfection of your face. They talk about the price of barley, a neighbor's new baby, a leaky roof. Your hands are not the soft, pale hands of an aristocrat. They are chapped, strung, and often smudged with clay from your father's workshop. You help him mix the clay, turn the smaller pieces, and apply the slip, the black gloss that will turn into beautiful figures in the kiln. Your beauty is not in your complexion, but in your utility. Your value is not in your marriage prospects, but in your contribution to the family as survival. You do not wear a fine linen chiton. You wear a simple, durable woolen peplos, probably dated rab, functional color. It is often stained with smoke from the cook fire and dust from the street. You don't have a collection of expensive jewelry, only perhaps a simple bronze pin to fasten your garment. Your appearance is dictated by practicality, not by the pursuit of a leisurely, ornamental ideal. Does this mean beauty is irrelevant to you? Not at all. You still take pride in your appearance. You wash your hair with olive oil and scent it with herbs you've gathered yourself. You might look at your reflection in a basin of water and wish your nose were a little straighter. The ideals of beauty showcased on the expensive pottery your father makes. The images of graceful goddesses and heroic myths still filter down to you. You are aware of the standard, even if it feels impossibly distant, like a story from another world. but the pressures are different. The most beautiful girl in your neighborhood might be admired, but she is also seen as a potential liability. A pretty face might attract the unwanted attention of a wealthy man's sons, slumming it in the local taverns, leading to trouble the family cannot afford. A reputation for being hard-working, healthy, and fertile is far more valuable currency here than a perfect profile. You stumble upon a curious historical debate here. How much did the lives of poor and wealthy women in Athens truly differ? The literary sources, all written by elite men, focus almost exclusively on the lives of their own class. They paint a picture of the ideal woman as secluded, silent, and unseen. But this was an ideal that a poor family simply could not afford. A potter's wife or a baker's daughter had to be out in the world, working in the shop, selling goods in the market. They were visible. They were part of the city's economic life. Some historians argue that this gave them a degree of freedom and agency that their wealthy, secluded sisters lacked. Others argue that this public life just exposed them to different, and perhaps greater, dangers and forms of harassment. Without the protection of high walls and male slaves, you see both sides of this argument in your daily life. You envy the wealthy woman you see carry through the agora in a litter, shielded from the sun and the grime. Her life seems so soft, so protected, but you also pity her. You hear the sounds of the city, the arguments, the laughter, the commerce, and you are a part of it. She is just passing through, an isolated passenger. You have a community at the fountain house. You have a tangible skill in the workshop. Your life is harder, but it feels more real, more grounded when it comes time for your marriage. Your father is not negotiating with kings. He is talking to the son of the baker down the street, or a fellow craftsman. The dowry might be a small sum of money, a few pieces of good pottery, and a promise of future cooperation between the two families. Your prospective husband is not looking for a trophy to display. He is looking for a partner. The woman who is strong, healthy, and knows how to run a household and help with the family business. He looks at your strong arms and your capable hands, and these are as beautiful to him as a swan-like neck might be to a poet. The life of the ordinary woman is not free from the tyranny of beauty standards, but it is a tyranny tempered by the harsh realities of survival. Your worth is measured in a different currency. It is a world where function often trumps form, and where the strength of your back can be more important than the symmetry of your face. You are not a living poem. You are a prose narrative, grittier, simpler, but with a strengthened resilience that the tragic heroines of myth could never know. The tragic stories of beautiful women are not just confined to the whispers of your nurse or the epic poems of Homer. They are a public spectacle. They are the lifeblood of the single most important artistic and civic institution in your world, the theater. Once a year, during the festival of the great Dionysia, the entire city flocks to the theater of Dionysus, carved into the southern slope of the Acropolis, to watch plays, and what they watch, more often than not, is the inevitable, bloody downfall of people touched by greatness, beauty, and hubris. You sit on the hard stone benches, packed in with thousands of your fellow citizens. The actors, all of whom are men, wear large, expressive masks and elaborate costumes. The stories they perform are the ones you know well, the myths of Oedipus, Agamemnon, and, of course, the women of Troy. The theater is where the national traumas and deepest anxieties of your culture are processed, debated, and put on public display. And on this stage, beauty is almost always a precursor to sorrow. The female protagonists of these tragedies, the Clytemnestra, the Antigones, the Medeas, are often described as beautiful, powerful, and dangerously intelligent, but their stories are not romances. They are chronicles of suffering, revenge, and death. You watch Eupedes play, the Trojan woman. It is set in the immediate aftermath of the fall of Troy. The stage is filled with the captive women of the royal family, the old queen Hecuba, the grieving widow Andromache, and the cursed prophetess Cassandra. And then, you, Helen, are brought onto the stage. Hecuba spits your name like a venomous curse. She blames you, and you alone, for the destruction of her city and her family. You are put on a mock trial, forced to defend your life against her accusations. You argue that you were a pawn of the gods, a victim of Aphrodite's power. Hecube counters that it was your own vanity, and lust that doomed them all. Watching this, you realize the theater is a courtroom for the national conscience. Here, the great questions of your culture are litigated. Is Helen guilty? How much of our lives are governed by fate, and how much by our own choices? The play doesn't give an easy answer, but by staging the debate, it forces the entire citizen body to confront the moral ambiguity of their own foundational myths. It turns a simple story of the faithless wife into a complex exploration of blame, agency, and divine will. Then you watch a play like Medea. Medea is a foreign princess, a sorceress of immense power, who helped the hero Jason obtain the Golden Fleece. He brought her back to Greece as his wife, but now, in the play, he has decided to discard her to marry a Greek princess, securing a better political position for himself. Medea, driven mad by this betrayal, is not a passive victim. She is a terrifying force of nature. She uses her cunning and her dark knowledge to exact a horrific revenge, murdering her rival, the rival's father, and, in the play's horrifying climax, her own 2 children with Jason, to ensure his absolute destruction. Medea is often described as beautiful, but hers is a dark, exotic, dangerous beauty. She is the ultimate nightmare of the other, the foreign woman who is not bound by the rules of Greek society, and whose unrestrained passions lead to chaos and ruin. Her story is a stark warning against the dangers of bringing a powerful, foreign element into the ordered Greek world. You learn a fascinating behind-the-scenes detail about the theater. The actors wore masks that were designed with exaggerated features to be visible, even to the spectators in the highest seats. The mask for a tragic heroine would have a beautiful but mournful expression. The mask itself predetermines the character's fate. When the actor playing Antigone or Iphigenia walks onto the stage, their beautiful, sad mask is already telling you that their story will not end well. Beauty, in the context of tragedy, is inextricably linked with suffering. Why did the Greeks love these stories so much? Why would an entire city spend days watching tales of incest, murder, and despair? This is a question that has fascinated thinkers from Aristotle to Nietzsche. Aristotle, in his Poetics, argued that the purpose of tragedy is to evoke pity and fear in the audience in order to produce a catharsis, a purging or cleansing of these emotions. By watching the terrible fate of a great and beautiful person on stage, you experience these powerful emotions in a safe, controlled environment. You leave the theater feeling emotionally drained, but also purified and perhaps a little wiser about the fragile nature of human fortune. The tragic heroines are almost always of noble birth, often beautiful, and highly renowned. This is crucial for the tragedy to work. The protagonist must have a great height from which to fall. The fall of a common person is sad. The fall of a queen, a princess, a woman whose beauty is legendary, is tragic. Your high status and your celebrated beauty are essential ingredients for your eventual destruction. It makes your downfall more pitiable, more terrifying, and ultimately more satisfying for the audience. As you leave the theater, the sun setting behind the hills, the dramatic wails of the chorus still ringing in your ears, you feel the weight of this artistic tradition. It confirms your deepest fears. In the stories your culture tells itself, a beautiful woman is a character in a tragedy waiting to happen. Her beauty is not a gift. It is her tragic flaw, the very thing that will lead her, and everyone around her, to a grim and sorrowful end. As the day ends, you find yourself back in the quiet, fading light of your own small room. The stories are swirling in your head, a dizzying vortex of jealous goddesses, obsessed heroes, cursed prophetesses, and fallen queens. You have been Medusa, Cassandra, Helen, and even the anonymous Lyra. You have felt the weight of a divine curse in the cold calculus of a dowry negotiation. You have seen how beauty can be a weapon, a prize, a prison, and a death sentence. You light a small, simple clay lamp, It's filled with olive oil, a single wick floating in the center. It putters to life, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. This is the light that will govern the rest of your evening. The darkness outside is profound, almost absolute. There are no streetlights, no glowing screens. The night belongs to the moon and the stars, and to the small, flickering flame in your lamp. This simple reality of light and darkness frames your final thoughts. The ancient world, you realize, was so much darker than your modern world. This physical darkness created a different kind of psychological space. It was a time for storytelling, for reflection, for fear of what lurked in the shadows, both literal and metaphorical. The stories you've explored tonight were born out of that darkness. They were a way to explain a world that was often capricious and cruel, a world where plague, a drought, or a war could descend with little warning. In these stories, female beauty became a convenient focal point for that chaos. It was a powerful, visible, and often unpredictable force. And in a world that craved order and control, especially a world controlled by men, this force needed to be explained, contained, and often narratively punished. The curse of beauty was not just a literary trope. It was a coping mechanism for a society deeply anxious about the things it could not control. You think about the mirror. The ancient mirror was not the perfect, clear glass of today. It was a disc of polished bronze or silver. The reflection it offered was always a little bit dark, a little bit warped, a little bit off focus. Perhaps you muse. This is the perfect metaphor. The Greek view of beauty was always a distorted reflection. It was never about seeing the real woman. It was about seeing a reflection of their own ideals, their fears, their philosophies, and their anxieties. The woman herself was lost in the wavy, imperfect surface of the bronze. And what about the idea of love? The word eros, which you've heard so much about, was seen as a dangerous, bittersweet, and often destructive force. It was a form of defying madness. The Greeks had other words for love: philia, the love of friendship and family; agape, the more selfless, universal love. But it was eros, the passionate, obsessive love inspired by beauty, that caused all the trouble. It was seen as an external force that attacked you, not an emotion that grew from within. This is why the gods are always struck by desire. It's a sickness, an arrow wound. This belief system makes it even harder for a beautiful woman. You are not just an object of affection. You are a potential carrier of a dangerous disease. You lie down on your simple pallet bed. You pull the woolen blanket up to your chin. The stories are beginning to recede now, their sharp edges softening into the stuff of dreams. You realize that the legacy of these tales is long uncomplicated. This idea of a dangerous, fatal beauty, the femme fatale, didn't die with the fall of Troy. It has echoed through the centuries. In art, literature, and film, the fear of female power, disguised as a fear of female beauty, is a ghost that still haunts the cultural imagination. Historians will forever be locked in debate, trying to untangle the threads of this complex tapestry. How much of it was lived reality for ancient Greek women? How much was pure myth making unpatriarchal propaganda? The truth, you suspect, is that it was an inseparable blend of both. The myths shaped the reality, and the reality fed the myths. In a cycle that lasted for 1,000 years, the flame in your oil lamp finally flickers and dies, plunging the room into darkness. The sounds of the city have mostly faded, replaced by the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant bark of a dog. You are no longer a queen or a priestess. You are just a person, in a bed, in the dark, at the end of a long and bewildering day. As you drift off to sleep, you are left with one final, quiet thought. Perhaps the greatest gift, the greatest beauty of all, was to be the one whose story was never told. A gentle quiet now settles over you. The weight of the ages, the dust of the agora, the scent of the olive groves, it all begins to feel distant, like a story you once read in a half-forgotten book. The sharp edges of Helen's tragedy and Cassandra's sorrow start to soften, blurring into the peaceful, deep blue of the encroaching dreamscape. You can feel the boundary between your own bed and the ancient world dissolving, leaving only a sense of profound, quiet rest. The hum of your fan is no longer a fan, it is the gentle Aegean breeze, carrying with it not warnings or prophecies, but only the promise of a deepened, untroubled sleep. The last echoes of the storyteller's voice fade away, replaced by the steady, rhythmic beat of your own calm heart. You are floating now, in a sea of comfortable silence, drifting further and further from the shores of wakeful Niles. There are no more lessons to be learned, no more tragedies to witness. There is only this moment of perfect, serene stillness. Let the darkness be a soft, warm blanket. Let the silence be a gentle lullaby. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are deeply, deeply asleep. The end of the article. Good night.